An entitled Karen tries to claim that I did $2,000 worth of damage to her car when all I did was accidentally bump it with my door, resulting in one of the weirdest blow-ups I've ever seen from a person in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, I was parked getting out of my car when the wind blew my door open gently. It barely touched the car next to mine, and there was no visible dent and just a possible mark. Well, I immediately acknowledged it and I offered to exchange information. When I explained it was the wind, not to avoid responsibility, but just to clarify that it wasn't a careless act, this entitled Karen cut me off. She said to me, No, something like this happened before and it cost $2,000. My car is new. At that point, it felt less like she was assessing real damage and more like she was trying to guilt trip and manipulate me. She even pointed out a completely unrelated mark further down and insisted this was from my door too, which made no sense based on where the door touched. And then it escalated fast. She then started filming me and my toddler who was crying in his car seat, scared and confused. She threatened to call the police, and I was trying to stay calm while juggling my phone, pulling up my insurance application, and soothe my child, but she just kept the camera on us. I could feel my son's distress behind me, and that's when I lost it emotionally and I called 911 myself. I didn't feel safe or respected, and I needed a neutral record of what was happening. After I gave her my info, I went back into the car to comfort my son, who by then was screaming and crying from the stress. I then looked up and she was still filming us. I was literally just trying to calm a scared toddler, and she kept her phone pointed at us like we were some kind of show, and that moment broke me. But you know what? It didn't stop there. When I showed her that I called 911, she told the police that I banged on her window, which was absolutely false. I simply held up my phone near the window to show her the call screen. She also accused me of locking my child in the car with no air circulation, which was so far from the truth it's not even funny. I was right there with the window cracked and the AC on. It was just another manipulation accusation meant to make me panic. She even lied about having the same insurance as me when I first mentioned mine, but it turned out she was with another one. It was just more weird, unnecessary power moves. I know she probably assumed that she could intimidate me because I'm an immigrant and English isn't my first language, and I look like someone who might not push back, but I didn't back down. I gave her my information, I made the call, and I stood my ground. My husband then showed up by Uber when I called him, and for the first time in the whole interaction, I felt not alone. I'm still feeling the stress hours later, but I am proud of how I handled it. I didn't yell, I didn't film her back, I didn't escalate, and I protected my son and I kept my dignity because I want him to grow up knowing that we do not back down from unfairness. We do not let people shame us into silence. And even when our hearts are pounding, we still speak up, especially when you're dealing with Karens who act like this. Oh man, this Karen is so far out of line, it's not even funny. Seriously, think about it for a second. She's literally filming you guys and being like, wow, you're a terrible mother. You're gonna pay $2,000 for my door, while also trying to blame you for other marks that she did herself probably. Like, this level of unhinged is completely unacceptable, and I seriously just can't stand when people act like this. So regardless of what this lady says, I really hope you took a lot of pictures of the damage just so you can show the insurance company that she absolutely is lying to them, because this Karen was clearly trying to scam you out of a lot of money, and that is not fair for you or your family in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my roommate that she can't bring her boyfriend over unless he starts buying groceries, because he quite literally is eating me out of house and home, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so me and my roommate, who we will call Chloe, have been living together for almost a year. We split rent, utilities, and groceries 50-50, and it's been mostly fine until her boyfriend basically started living with us. Like, he's not officially moved in or anything like that, but he's here 4 to 5 nights a week, sometimes even more. He showers here, he sleeps here, and he eats all the time. He will make himself full-on meals with our shared groceries and not even ask us first. And before anyone says anything, yes, I've talked to her about it. I brought it up just kind of casually at first, where I would say to her, hey, do you think your boyfriend could pitch in for groceries since he's here a lot? But Chloe just laughed it off and said, oh, he doesn't even eat that much. For the record, my boyfriend comes over too sometimes, but he only eats food that I specifically bought, like snacks that I keep in my room or label, and he always asks before he does that. One time, he accidentally ate Chloe's leftover takeout from the fridge because he thought it was mine, and she absolutely flipped out, like full-on mad for a whole day kind of flipped out. I apologized and he offered to replace it, but she was still super salty towards him. Meanwhile, her boyfriend's making grilled cheese, eggs, ramen, helping himself to whatever's in the fridge like it's some kind of free-for-all. I let it go for a bit, but last week I went to make lunch and I realized he finished the last of the eggs, bacon, and lunch meat that I bought. And that was my last straw. I mean, I'm a college student. I literally cannot afford this. I told her again, but more directly this time, that if he's gonna be here that often and eating our food, he needs to start contributing, or just not eat stuff that I paid for. Chloe got super defensive and said I'm being unfair, and that I'm gatekeeping food, and that I'm making things awkward when he's literally just existing. I said it's not about him being here. It's about him acting like he lives here without actually paying to live here. Now she's barely speaking to me and said that I'm ruining her vibe and making her feel like she can't have her boyfriend over. I'm seriously not trying to be controlling, but I also don't want to be feeding a third person for free. So did I overreact in this scenario? My boyfriend, my best friend, and my mom are the only people who know about this. My boyfriend and best friend are on my side, while my mom thinks this would be a stupid thing to end a friendship over, and I should just let it go before it turns into something bigger. What should I do? Okay, I am 100% on the original poster side here, because this guy is eating all of your food. This is a really simple solution, like Chloe's boyfriend needs to step up and start paying for his share, especially if he's here 4 to 5 nights a week. Like at that point, you basically live here and you need to start contributing or get out. And it's the fact that he's polishing off all of your groceries, like that in and of itself would make me go crazy. I would be super frustrated, I would be really annoyed, and that would not be okay for me. Like seriously, I would be super upset. So yes, you have every right to be pissed off, because what your roommate's allowing, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for going off on my friends after they made fun of my 9-year-old niece with really cruel jokes, which eventually led to her crying and breaking down? Here's what happened. Okay, so here's the situation. I'm a teenager and I was hanging out with a group of friends who love to joke around a lot, and I'm used to their sense of humor. It's sarcastic, edgy, and sometimes borderline mean, but I've known them long enough to know what's serious and what's not. My younger 9-year-old niece, however, is not used to that kind of humor. She wanted to talk to them while I was gaming or chatting with them, and I warned her and I said, you might not like them, they're not always the nicest people, but she insisted. She really wanted to join in and seemed really excited, so I agreed. But I specifically told my friends beforehand, hey, she's only 9. Please don't go too far or say anything mean. And when I said that, they agreed. Everything was fine for the first few minutes. She was talking with them and even singing a little. I went to the bathroom for literally a minute or two, and when I came back, she was on the bed crying and shaking. I asked her what happened, and she told me that they were making fun of her singing and saying mean things to her. I looked at the chat, and sure enough, I saw some of their comments, and they were sarcastic and really mocking. And I don't care if they say it was just jokes. She was clearly not okay. I told them, what is going on? I told you not to go too far. They replied by saying, we're just joking, quit being dramatic. And you know what? That just set me off. I said, no, she's a kid. You don't say that to kids. That's common sense. You guys are jerks. After that, I blocked them and I haven't spoken to them since. But they keep trying to spin it like I overreacted and can't take a joke. But I really don't think I was wrong for standing up for her. She is just a little kid who wanted to hang out and got emotionally wrecked instead. I know I went off on them hard, but I'm still furious about it. And honestly, if someone did that to your younger sibling or niece or cousin, wouldn't you go off too? So seriously, I really need to know if I'm the jerk, because I'm not sure if I took things a little too far. No, you're not in the wrong here. Your friends are idiots. They also don't sound like good friends in the slightest, because in my experience, people who constantly make these kind of jokes usually are not joking around. There's usually some kind of truth in what they're saying, but they're framing this as a joke even though they really mean it, and they're just being jerks. So yeah, these people suck, and you can definitely find better friends than this, because anyone who willingly makes a child cry, in my opinion, is a massive piece of crap. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that he can't be upset that a girl he had a crush on has a boyfriend? Because right now he's pissed off at me and is refusing to talk to me. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 22-year-old female, and I was friends with this guy who's 25 years old, and he was telling me about his work crush. He said that she has the perfect body and her face isn't that bad. And for reference, I work with him, so I know he has never spoken to this girl. This girl 2 days later became friends with me, and I find out that she has a boyfriend. So I tell my friend because I thought it would save him the embarrassment of trying to ask out a taken woman. He then texts me and says he's really disappointed and wished that he didn't tell me that he had a crush on her because he didn't want to know that she had a boyfriend. He had told me he was going to ask her out, so he would have found out eventually anyways. And this makes me upset, because why are you so upset when you never spoke to this girl and we've only worked with her for 3 days? She also rarely talks at work, so it's not like he could like her personality from that. And now I'm friends with her and I actually like her a lot, so it makes me even more upset that he would depersonalize her like that. I responded by saying, you don't know her, how could you even care? I then realized that was a bit mean, so I was like, it's okay, I'm sure you'll find someone eventually. He then proceeds to ignore me for 2 days, so I text him and I ask if we're still on for hanging out tomorrow, since we said we would before that text. He He responds back by saying no, so I tried to call him so that we could talk, but he declines it. I then texted him and he told me that he was upset because of the comment. I explained that, and as he knows since I have told him before, that I have been used for my body multiple times by men who don't care about my personality. So when he made that comment about her body, it really upset me. He responds by saying, "Stop texting me." And I was confused and I asked, "Okay, are you serious right now?" He then said, "Stop texting me, it's bothering me." And now I'm confused because that feels like a crazy reaction in response to my text. I know it wasn't nice, but to stop being friends with me altogether seems insane. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because I honestly don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. Your friend is weird. You would think him finding out that this girl is taken would be like a relief of some kind, because then he really can avoid being embarrassed and like humiliating himself. And the fact that he's like cutting you off and acting like, "Oh, stop texting me, you're bothering me." This guy is clearly super immature, and I think he can find way better friends than this guy. Today, I messed up by meeting my girlfriend's family, who she told me multiple times was a messed up group of people. But despite the fact that I didn't believe him, once I met them, I realized very quickly how bad things truly were, eventually leading to me begging my girlfriend that we leave and never come back here ever again. Here's what happened. My girlfriend always described her family as people I would never want to meet in person because they were apparently the worst. I struggled to believe that anyone related to her was as bad as she made it sound, especially because she never wanted to tell me anything about her relatives, so I had nothing to go on. Well, since I recently flew all the way to South Africa to spend time with my girlfriend, I encouraged her to introduce me to her family. Well, my girlfriend agreed to take me to her mom and dad's house if I agreed to leave her family out of our relationship going forward, and I said I promised. Well, fast forward to my girlfriend deciding to drive me straight from the airport to her family's house, and I was unaware that we were on our way to meet the family until I paid closer attention to where we were, which was not where my girlfriend lived. My girlfriend said I wanted to meet her messed up family so bad, so she was about to introduce them to me. I said I didn't expect us to go on this journey as soon as I landed, but I guess we're gonna meet this messed up family one way or another. My girlfriend referred to the area we entered as the Cape Flats, which appeared to be a low-income community. As my girlfriend was driving deeper into the Cape Flats, she pointed at various groups of guys standing on different street corners and said if I wanted to avoid getting stabbed, then I should avoid going to those guys. One of the guys actually noticed my girlfriend and waved at her as we passed him. She waved back at him before telling me that she used to date that dude, but then he ended up going to prison for beating up one of her math teachers because said teacher made her come to school on a Saturday, which was supposed to be their day. By the time we arrived at our destination, I learned that I could get taken out and that my girlfriend used to be in love with a guy who might have been capable of doing that. Well, fast forward to meeting the family, and my girlfriend and I had to let ourselves into the house because everyone was too busy enjoying themselves by the cookout in the backyard. No one was sober when we showed up, and the dad welcomed me with a beer and asked if I had American money on me because he always wanted to see a dollar with his own eyes. So I opened up my wallet and I showed him a dollar. The dad showed the dollar to the rest of the family, including his wife, who then proceeded to put the dollar in her bra before telling me to come and get it. Well, my girlfriend then just looked at me like, "Well, I warned you, didn't I?" So I made peace with the fact that my money was most likely gone for good because I was not planning on going there just to get a dollar. My girlfriend eventually pulled me away from her parents and introduced me to her brother, who gave me a quick nod before shifting his attention back to my girlfriend and asking her if he could borrow her car to go out and get more alcohol. My girlfriend said that she was not giving the keys to her car to her intoxicated brother. Her brother pointed at his girlfriend who was dancing on her own in the backyard and said that she could drive because she only had one beer. My girlfriend asked her brother if he was referring to the young-looking girl who was twerking to a remix of My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. So I said that I would drive. And when I said that, my girlfriend and her brother seemed really surprised. I said I was willing to drive if the brother showed me the way. Well, my girlfriend then flat out asked me if I was attempting to impress her degenerate family. The answer was yes, but I said no. My girlfriend then sighed like she was pitying me and eventually gave me her car keys. So there I was, driving the brother, and he made me stop at several locations on our way to the liquor store. The first location was where we picked up his friend before going to the following location, which was where the herb supplier lived, if you know what I mean. The brother offered to share this with me if I promised to tell my girlfriend nothing about his side quest. Well, I didn't accept it and I made no promises. I was too stressed out about all the unplanned stops that we were making to even think about getting high and keeping secrets. The friend then directed me towards the nearest barbershop and got out. The brother promised me that we only had one more stop to make before going to the liquor store, and the final pre-liquor store location was where the brother's baby mama lived. The baby mama never answered the door when the brother came knocking, and I was relieved because it was obvious that no one was home, and I thought that meant that we could leave. But the brother continued knocking on the door and saying things to his baby mama, who he believed was pretending not to be home to piss him off or whatever. I didn't understand anything he was saying because he was speaking to his baby mama in another language, but he would turn to me from time to time and feel the need to tell me what was going through his mind at the moment. My girlfriend called to ask me where we were, and I said I would explain everything when I got back. Well, I eventually got back with the brother who finally got the alcohol, and as soon as I saw my girlfriend again, I begged her to get us away from her family. Oh wow, this really does sound like a nightmare because my god, I think we've all been there to some degree. Here's the thing, if you have someone that you love and care about, and they really tell you like, listen, my family is messed up, let's not go there, then I think it would probably be a good idea to listen to her because she probably knows a lot more than you. It's also crazy to me that this guy literally agreed to drive this brother around a town that he's never been in. Seriously, from the sounds of it, this brother sounds like one of those people across the street who could get him taken out. Like, what was this guy thinking? That is so stupid. So yeah, this really was a big mess up, and hopefully this doesn't happen in the future because this is not a mistake that you want to make twice. Am I the jerk for asking my mom to pay to attend my wedding after she nearly blew me off and said that she couldn't afford it? Because right now I'm not sure if I'm making a mistake, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my mom chose to abandon her parental rights when I was 10 months old to be with a man that she met and moved states away. She came back into my life when I was 4 years old after they broke up and was in and out of my life my entire childhood. When she would come back into my life, she was extremely awful both emotionally and physically. My father was also not perfect. He was an alcoholic. I had been put into foster care a few times, and my mom never showed up to any of the court dates. When I was 14 years old, she found God and remarried an extremely hardcore religious man that she met at church. And needless to say, her husband has always hated me, told me that I couldn't live with them because I didn't follow the path of God, and they've never helped me with anything financially, and she never even paid child support. Well, fast forward to 2 years ago, and her husband have had 3 daughters, ages 12, 10, and 7 as of right now. And it's then that my mom asked me to buy her restaurant for $25,000. It started to get to the point where she was begging me, trying to tell me that it was a great business investment, that she had so many offers and wanted to keep it in the family. And she said I would make easily $100,000 a year. She didn't know her husband had texted me months earlier saying that their business was failing and he wanted me to help them turn the business around. So I told her I was sick of her only contacting me when she needed something. She then had my sisters to call me and leave me voicemails asking why I was ignoring them and wouldn't come visit. I got engaged in June of last year, and my fiance's family offered to put in $15,000 for the wedding. My dad matched that, and my fiance and I are putting in around $10,000. My fiance has a huge family, and I only have about 10 people on my dad's side. My mom found out about our wedding from Facebook and offered to fly out my aunts, her daughter, and both of my grandparents. They all live in Thailand, so I was really grateful to be able to have them there. I've always had a pretty good relationship with them and wouldn't be able to afford to pay for all of their flights here without her. I was ready to bury the hatchet just to have them attend, but my dad's family made it very clear that they didn't want to pay for her and her family. I then asked her if she could just pay for herself, her husband, and her family, and she told me that she could only give me $1,000 because she has to pay for her kids' private school. Well, with catering, the bar, and rentals, everything ends up being about $250 a person. When I told her this, she said that I should expect that everything else would be paid off by gifts from the guests. Now, I don't want to seem ungrateful and selfish for telling my own mom and family that they can't come to my wedding because they won't give us any money, but I really did not want to have other people, especially my father, pay for her to be there when she's never helped me with anything in the past. So am I the jerk for telling her that she can't come unless she gives me more money? Because right now I'm honestly not sure what to do. Okay, to be completely honest, I don't even know why you're even allowing them to show up in the first place. Your mom sounds obnoxious, and it sounds like she really is just not a good person. She was not there for you growing up, and it seems like she's just not there now. So the fact that she's not willing to pony up like everybody else has, in my opinion, shows everything that you need to know. And in my opinion, that means that she shouldn't even be there, especially if she's not willing to pay what everybody else is. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that she needs to clean more if she's not going to be getting a job anytime soon? Because right now she's saying that I'm being unreasonable, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My girlfriend and I have been together for 4 years and have been living together for around 2. She had a part-time job up until January or so, working 2 to 3 days per week, but she quit because she couldn't stand working there any longer. Now I, on the other hand, work a full-time job. I have a full-time college schedule, even though all the school is online, but it still requires around 4 hours of work per week. Anyways, I don't mind being the provider, but I don't want some traditional wife who's only there to cook, clean, and look pretty. However, I feel I'm putting in 40 hours of work a week and 4+ hours per week into school. So the least that she could do is pick up around the house, namely do the laundries or do the dishes. is. I go to work from 9 to 5, then we go to the gym, and then I come home and I cook for us. Every time I try to express that our effort feels one-sided, she says that I'm being unfair and that she shouldn't be the only one doing these things around the house, which I agree with to an extent, but she does nothing worthwhile while I'm at work. She'll sleep, lay in bed on her phone, or play video games. I just don't know how to work something out. Her friends are also taking her side and say it's unfair for me to ask her to clean, but I really don't understand how that's unreasonable to ask. So truly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I'm still incredibly frustrated. No, you're not the jerk. Honestly, this seems completely reasonable in my opinion, and I think she really could step up and try to take care of the house more at least while she's not working. And also, let's be honest for a second. I kind of see it as a big red flag that she quit her job all because she didn't want to work there any longer, but she only worked there 2 to 3 days per week? That's not really that bad. Seriously, there's no reason to quit after that. Unless this job is some kind of actual nightmare that we're not aware of. Because for me, 2 to 3 days of work a week would not be that bad. I could do that no problem at a part-time schedule. Are you kidding me? So no, you're not the jerk for asking her to clean more, because in my opinion, that is the bare minimum that she should be required to do. An entitled Karen demands that I let her young children into an advanced parkour class that I teach. And despite the fact that I told her they are not ready to be at this kind of level, she demanded that they be involved no matter what. And as a result, one of the kids got hurt, and this entitled Karen seriously tried to blame it on me. And I've never been more shocked by someone's stupidity in my life. Here's what happened. So I work as an instructor teaching parkour and free running basic skills to small children ages 2 to 6 years old. And most of my classes are in private institutions like schools or specialized gyms. Now, I say the basics, but it really is more bodily control and perception than bona fide parkour since they are very young. I separate kids based on age and skill into different classes, which challenges them accordingly, having the older kids dip their toes into actual parkour and free running skills. Now, I had this mother, who basically is the entitled Karen of this story, and 2 of her kids, ages 2 and 3 years old respectively, come for a test class to see if the kids are interested. The kids enjoy the class since I tried to make them both challenging and fun by playing games where they had to traverse obstacle courses and try to set up scenarios for them to use their imagination. For example, maybe there's a pirate ship sinking and we have to jump onto the lifeboats or something like that. Something fun that the kids can engage with. The administration later lets me know that they enrolled and all is well. Now, something you have to know about my classes is that even though they are taught in a special order-made room, and I make sure that most surfaces are padded, and I'm super paranoid about any accidents, so I do my best to keep a safe environment, sometimes kids can take a fall, especially if they aren't following instructions or throwing a temper tantrum. And this was the case with the entitled Karen and her 2 kids, since they were always refusing to listen to instructions and threw tantrums when I tried to explain why they couldn't just run off to play, as if this is just some kind of playground, which it absolutely isn't. After a couple of weeks of this, the entitled Karen comes into my classroom to tell me, not ask me mind you, that her kids are ready for the advanced class, which is for kids ages 5 and 6. And this is because they have grown bored of the kiddie class since they are so much better than the other kids, which they are absolutely not. I politely let her know that although they are indeed pretty active kids, they first have to become responsible for their actions since they tend to push other kids around and not listen to instructions, and therefore they are not yet ready, since the older kids class is way tougher and I can't just follow 2 kids around to take care of them and neglect the rest of the class since there could be some kind of accident. But honestly, I wish it ended there, because this entitled Karen takes this up a notch in a way that I really didn't expect. Now, these are not in any way big groups. I only take groups of 5 kids at most, since it's all I can handle on my own to make sure every kid is as safe as possible. But having to take care of underage kids and leaving 3 other kids unattended is a big no-no in my book. Anyways, this entitled Karen doesn't seem to take my words kindly, but accepts my decision, or so I thought. Next week, I come in to have the receptionist tell me that the entitled Karen had basically thrown a tantrum to let her kids go into the advanced class anyways, all in spite of my warnings, and they were asking me if I could just let this slide this time. Obviously, I'm not okay with this, as it endangers not only these kids, but the other kids as well. But I can just see it now. She storms into the classroom again, angrier this time if I say no. So I have the front desk get her to sign an additional waiver just to try and be on the safe side. The day comes when I have to teach the advanced class, and in comes marching with a smug grin on her face, then none other than the entitled Karen and her stupid kids. I welcome them gym and I start my class, which as I said is way more demanding and has some actual parkour techniques sprinkled in. It would be unfair to the age-appropriate kids to downplay the class just because these entitled kids are enrolled, so I don't do that. However, I keep a close eye on them just to avoid any issues. That day, the kids had to clear a small gap jump and latch onto an edge of a wall and shimmy along while hanging. Picture hanging movement in the Assassin's Creed series. Everything but the floor is padded, of course. However, it is a substantial fall for kids that age. It's about 1.5 meters. So I'm helping one of the older kids shimmy along, and I see the next in line to make the jump is the elder of the entitled siblings, and I ask her to wait for me so that I can spot her jump in case her hands slip or she doesn't clear the gap. She then starts throwing a tantrum about how she's a big girl now and she can do it on her own, to which I respond by saying that she should just let me be there to make sure that she doesn't get hurt. I run back to her after helping the other kids reach the ground and help her reach the wall since she couldn't clear the gap, to which she goes absolutely mad and storms out of the classroom. 5 minutes later, she comes back in with her entitled Karen of a mother, demanding that I let her jump on her own. I once again explain why this is a bad idea, and we run the circuit once again. Again, I am helping the kid lapping before her and ask her to wait for me, but instead of listening, she jumps into the wall, fails to clear the gap, crashes into the wall face first, and then plops onto the ground, knocking the wind out of herself. I rush to check if she's unhurt, which thankfully she is aside from the fall, and she starts swiping at me, and once she recovers, she starts bawling her eyes out and storms out of the classroom again. Now once again, I'm faced with this entitled Karen demanding to know why I let her daughter get hurt during my class, and starts accusing me of being neglectful and incompetent, and that she'll take measures against the school and me. I tell her I understand she's upset, but I asked that kid to stay still and wait for me, but she refused to listen, and to remember that I warned her that they were not ready yet for this class, as they did not follow instructions which were meant to keep them safe. This entitled Karen keeps going on about how I can expect to be fired soon, while also spewing out the usual entitled parent monologue, and then she just straight up leaves. I tell the front desk what just happened, and I ask them to check the cameras in my classroom so that they can have proof in the case that she tries something legally, and reminded them that she had signed a second waiver. Thankfully though, she never did come back, which makes this entire scenario even funnier because she paid for a whole month in advance. Wow, that lady's an awful parent. Can I just say that? This entitled Karen literally put their kids in some kind of class that they were very clearly not ready for. Like, she seriously just couldn't listen to the person that was in charge. She couldn't just allow them to explain, hey, your kids are not ready, because they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen to a single thing that was being told to them, and that is probably the most dangerous part. They probably could have cleared the jump. They probably could have done all the moves, but they were not mature enough to follow basic instructions. So honestly, the original poster is not at fault. This absolutely falls squarely on this entitled Karen, and she has nobody to blame for this incident except for herself. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled jerk demands my window seat for an 11-hour flight to Cairo, but even when I tell him that no, I'm not going to switch seats, he doesn't take no for an answer and literally almost bothers me for the entire flight. Here's what happened. So this happened a while back, but it's an excellent example of sheer entitlement. I took a flight from New York to Cairo, and the seat configuration was 3 rows of seats, 2 window and aisle on each side, with 4 or 5 middle seats in the center. I had a window over the wing. I chose the seat with sleep in mind many months in advance. While I do frequently travel, I'm not going to pretend that I often jet away to Egypt, so this vacation was very planned out. I was settled into my seat when my aisle mate approached his and asked if I'd be willing to switch with his wife so the two of them could sit together. The two of them seemed to be with a group of similar age travelers. It appeared to me based on chatter that it may have been some kind of group tour, especially with my knowledge of the industry and the organizers that may have neglected the seating assignments. Now, I was absolutely willing to consider a swap if the seat was comparable, but naturally when I asked where his wife's seat was, he pointed and she waved at me from the center of the middle seats. I said to them, no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep my seat. Instead of switching out with a middle seat person, who I'm sure would have been delighted to take the aisle so he could still sit next to his wife, he sits down in his seat and starts trying to argue with me. He starts saying how the view is bad anyway since it's over the wing, and how I won't see anything anyways as it's mostly overnight and it's dark out. I just replied replied that I plan to sleep against it and I decline again. I'm trying to be pleasant and I am a people pleaser, and now I'm stuck next to this guy. He continues to bug me like the mosquito he may have been in a former life. He then asked me, if you had a husband, wouldn't you want to sit with him? At this point, I'm totally irritated. So I stated that I do have a husband, and if my husband and I were traveling together, I'd not only ensure our seats were assigned together, but if they weren't, I'd give up my aisle and go sit with my spouse in the middle. He eventually shut up with the direct comments, but his grumbling persisted throughout the entire flight, just not to my face, as he pretended to ignore my existence. Fast forward and the plane has eventually landed, and believe it or not, this guy was still grumbling the entire time. Wow, what a spoiled little brat. That guy was super entitled. You have it right. If this guy really wanted to sit next to his wife, he should have gone to somebody in the middle and said, hey, can I switch seats with you? Is that okay? But instead of doing that, he wanted to be a jerk and try and take away your seat that you planned for in advance. Like seriously, their problems are not your problems. The fact that they can't plan their trip properly and they don't know how to, I don't know, pick seats that are next to each other is literally not your fault. These people just don't know how to plan things properly. So if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. I personally would have put headphones on in the middle of his rant, just to show him that not only do I not care anymore, but his noise is honestly not gonna bother me. So good for you for standing your ground, because this guy was incredibly entitled and he literally just wanted to take your seat and give it to his wife. My husband constantly criticizes everything that I enjoy, always making a nasty comment or putting me down for trying something new. And after dealing with this for so many years, I'm at my breaking point, and now I seriously don't know what to do. My husband and I have been together for a little under 5 years and married for about 2.5 years. He feels the need to criticize every last thing that brings me joy in the world. I love classic cars, but I'm not allowed to mention them because of trauma with his dad around cars. I picked up my saxophone for the first time in years, and I tried to play something quickly to see what I remembered, and he just had to tell me that I sounded like garbage and I needed to practice. I'm not allowed to color in adult coloring books because it's not real art, and he's an artist, not me, and I can't watch shows or movies I like because he can't shut his mouth about everything that's bad in the movie. And today was the breaking point. I wanted to watch the newest Guardians of the Galaxy movie because I've enjoyed the series overall. I started watching it last night and I got about halfway through putting up with his comments before I got too tired and needed to go to bed. He mentioned I should finish watching it, which I then put on the movie from where I left off, and I kept telling him to stop with the comments so I can just watch the movie and enjoy it. I finally reached my breaking point when it got near the end of the movie and he decided that he needed to get angry about a point that he didn't understand that was mentioned multiple times in the movie. I'll admit, I gave a frustrated sigh, and he got angry because he needs to be able to say those things. I left the room in tears because I felt like he just doesn't care at all. He has then proceeded to yell at me because some people are like that, even though I've made it clear over the years that it's extremely frustrating and unnecessary. He keeps trying to defend his point that it's normal and then decided to say that I never let him enjoy anything. Now, he doesn't work and has all the time in the day to do whatever he wants. At this point, I'm at my absolute limit, and I just don't know if I can do this anymore. I have no hobbies, even though he keeps saying I need to find something I enjoy, but every time I do, he has some nasty comments to make, and I just give up because I don't want to listen to it anymore. Is there anything I can do to get him to understand what he is putting me through? What should I do? This is honestly not okay. Your husband is bullying you at every drop of the hat. Anything that you like, anything you want to do or watch, he's got some kind of negative comment he wants to throw in your face. That is so ridiculous. I can't imagine living with that day in and day out. And worst of all, he takes out his frustration on you as if it's your fault that he doesn't understand, I don't know, this stupid movie. If he was paying attention and not commenting, he would probably know exactly what's going on. Meanwhile, you're just trying to watch the movie and not have to explain everything to him because it's not like you know what's going on. Honestly, I don't think you're overreacting here, and I don't blame you for getting upset and breaking into tears. This has been one small thing at a time, and it's built up to this giant pyramid of just awful behavior. And honestly, you do not deserve that in the slightest. And actually, the original poster has some things to say in regards to that. They said that they basically had a wake-up call after she read some of the comments from the story she shared, and she says that she's gonna move forward with divorce. And honestly, if that's the route you want to go, and if this is seriously that kind of pattern where you know this is never gonna fix itself, well then good for you for recognizing it at least. Clearly, this is a lot worse than we may realize as the audience, and hopefully for the sake of your own happiness, this all works out in your favor and you're able to find happiness in your life once again. My mother is demanding demanding money from me in advance for a book that I plan on publishing, claiming that she needs the money for her boyfriend's kids. And at this point, I'm so sick of her and I seriously don't know what to do. So my parents have demanded money from any income I've had most of my life. When I was 12 years old, I had a paper route that I never saw a dollar from. And when I was older, I constantly had to give or loan out money to them and even used an entire paycheck to help cover rent more than once. I always assumed it was both, but after my parents split up, my dad stopped asking for money and my mom didn't. So it was obvious that she was the one always pushing for it. I love my mom, don't get me wrong. She did a lot right with raising me and my siblings. And as much as it sucked to keep giving up my money, I felt that I had to pay her back for everything that she did. And trust me, I know that this was misguided. But after my parents split up, she completely went off the deep end. She started doing heavy substances and was constantly going out to see men. I try not to judge, but it all came to a head when I brought my sons over for a family Thanksgiving years ago, and she literally spent the entire day in her room with two different guys supposedly getting a tattoo that I never saw. Now, she has no stable home, claims to be going to rehab every few months, and has a new boyfriend every time I hear an update from her. She never makes any effort or time to see me or my family, including my 7-year-old son that she has never even met. So fast forward, and I'm now almost done writing a book. It's nothing spectacular, but I'm proud of it, and some people might even like it. I've been posting on Facebook to my friends and family for people to help me review it and give me their thoughts, which is a process that has taken a couple of years, and to no one's surprise, she has done nothing to help with this. Now, I plan to publish this book soon, so I wasn't really surprised when I got a message from her out of the blue saying to me, "With the money you get from the book, you can help me make sure I have a great Christmas with me and my boyfriend's kids." Now, I've shrugged off similar messages from her in the past, but this one really set me off. All I said was, no, any money I make goes to my family, but I wanted to say so much more. She is still in contact with my siblings, so I don't want to upset her and cause more family drama, but what I wanted to say was this: listen, I'm an amateur author doing my first book. This won't make much, if anything at all, and on the off chance I hit the proverbial lottery and people like it much more than I'm expecting, I still won't give you a cent. My wife deserves help bringing in money for our family. My kids deserve a good education, and I even have friends who say hi every couple of weeks and ask about my children more than you do that, and I would give them money way before I would give you any money. So you know what? Get lost. You and your boyfriend and his kids. You care more about them than you do your own grandchildren. I just wanted to get that off my chest, and maybe one day I can finally tell her exactly how I feel. Yeah, that is such a shame. Your mom is clearly using you and trying to take every cent out of your pocket and literally can't even stand on her own 2 feet. Like seriously, look at the way she lives her life. She goes from boyfriend to boyfriend. She spends all this time without a home or any place to stay. Even when you were a kid, your mom was acting like this. I mean, it kind of makes sense as to why your dad divorced her in the first place. So honestly, even though you weren't able to say all the things you wanted to say to her just to avoid any family drama, good for you for at least saying, nope, you're not getting any money. My family is the only one getting the money. Because you're right, you're a first-time author. The chances of your book getting big are kind of slim to none, but even if it did get big, you deserve all of that money yourself because you've worked for it and you've sacrificed a lot to try and get it done, which is a lot more than anything your mom can say about anything in her life. Am I the jerk for correcting my husband in the way he refers to me as his wife? Here's what happened. So my husband and I have been married for just under a year, and I love him very much. He has an 8-year-old daughter from his previous marriage who I love as my own. He's always been respectful and patient, which is part of why I decided to marry him. We met right before the pandemic when he had been recently widowed the year before, so we tried to take things slow. We ended up being in quarantine together, and after 3 years we decided to tie the knot. The wedding ceremony was everything a girl could dream of, and we've honestly had very few issues in our first year as a couple. It wasn't until we went to pick up his daughter from summer camp that I started seeing an issue. I went to meet up with him at the front desk. I found him chatting with the camp coordinator, which is all well and good, until I overheard what he was saying. He mentioned that his wife made him this jacket and that she was really good at sewing stuff. Now he was mentioning his ex-wife, not me. It bugged me a little bit, but I brushed it off as a one-time thing. Maybe it was just an accident. We don't talk about his ex-wife much unless we're around his daughter, and even then, he usually refers to her as his daughter's mother. I never heard him call her his wife, especially now that we are finally married. It wasn't until a week or two later that I learned he does this a lot. We were at a get-together with some friends from work, work, and it was my first time meeting them. It was all good until one of them asked me questions about baseball. Now, I will admit, I didn't know much about the sport, and he said that was weird because my husband had mentioned I was really good at the game and even played some in college, and that left me very confused. After talking to some more guys, I found out this was a common issue. A lot of them thought that his ex-wife and I were the same person because my husband called both of us his wife. At this point, I got really offended. He had been married for 10 months and he couldn't even call her his ex-wife yet. I was super awkward and explaining to people that he still called his ex-wife his current wife, and I was utterly humiliated, especially with the amount he does it, and not just to one or two people, but literally to the entire office. So when we got home, we fought. He said he didn't even think about it that way, that since he never divorced his wife, he never stopped thinking about her as his wife. He still stands by the fact that she is his wife, despite how embarrassing it is to explain to people that I'm not his second wife, but rather his new wife, and that his former wife is his ex. I told him if he really wasn't ready to move on, then he shouldn't have married me in the first place. And if he can't commit to being my husband, then he shouldn't get to call me his wife. I spent the next night at my sister's house ignoring his calls, and we recently started to smooth things over by not talking about them. But I can tell that this is going to be a sore spot in the marriage. And right now, I'm desperately trying to save this. So am I the jerk for trying to correct this issue? What should I do? Yeah, that seems really messed up. You are his wife, not his ex-wife who passed away. Like seriously, that needs to be a distinction. It sounds like he has not grieved completely what happened, and he's kind of in denial from the sounds of it. And honestly, that is really sad. I completely understand where he's coming from, but this needs to change. So no, I don't think you're the jerk here. I think you were completely justified in correcting this, and hopefully some kind of solution is brought about from this much sooner than later. My former employer was refusing to pay me my money that he owed me, claiming that he was going through financial hardship and that because he was closing down his business, he was not going to pay me a single dime. So I decided to get some revenge. And as a result of me being involved, he ended up getting exposed for cheating on his wife, resulting in his life practically being ruined. Here's what happened. So honestly, I want to start off by saying I was just trying to get my money that I was owed. I wasn't trying to ruin this guy's life in the process. That's honestly just what ended up happening. And I was told by some of my friends that I might want to upload this story here. So here we go. Some years back, I ended up doing work for this guy. I'll call him Richard, that's not his real name. And it was just a side job for some extra money, not my career or anything like that. Richard had a small business. It's really boring. I won't really get into any of that. But before me, he had one other employee. So I made two in total. Literally just two employees. That's how small this business was. The thing was, Richard ran his business like garbage. I didn't know the specifics of his financial situation, but based on where he lived, the car that he drove, as well as every other aspect of his life, he was doing pretty well. Maybe it was an inheritance or something like that, but whatever, I didn't know. But his situation in life clearly wasn't due to the business. And again, to reiterate, he ran this business horribly. In fact, he ran this business so badly that after 6 months after I started doing work for him, the business wasn't making any money anymore. So instead of regular payments like usual, the other employee and I had to start asking where our money was before it showed up. Then the payments started getting more and more behind. Eventually, I was owed around $500. Then one day, the other employee tells me, I'm done. He owes me like $5,000 and I'm not going to keep working for nothing. And when I heard that, I was in shock because I had no idea he was owed that much. The trouble with pay clearly went back further than I knew. So Richard ended up coming to me and saying, look, I owe the other guy money and I need to pay him. Do you mind if I get him all paid up? Which means I would have to hold off on paying you for a month or two. But once he's paid off, I swear I'll make it all up to you. Now, because I'm a complete idiot and because I felt bad about the first employee, who was a good guy overall, I said fine, go right ahead. And honestly, this was such a big mistake as things escalated in a way that I really didn't expect. So I didn't get paid at all for a while, which increased my total up to about $1,500. Then I eventually heard from the other employee and he told me that Richard finally paid him everything he was owed. So I thought to myself, great, now it's my turn, right? Well, I was completely wrong. A few weeks after I heard the other employee was paid up, which I only ever heard from him, never Richard himself, Richard told me he was closing the business, which didn't shock me at all. I mean, surely it had been losing money for quite a while. So I say to him, okay, so where's my money? And I told him exactly how much he owed me. I got back a response that basically said, well, the thing is, I can't really pay you now. And then he started giving me excuses. And this went on for a year. Now, I looked into what my steps were legally, but I would have had to file something in small claims claims court, as it is only $1,500, and having to get a lawyer would probably eat up most of it. So I just kept bugging Richard about the money. I was saying, hey, just pay me $25 a month, I don't care. But he wouldn't even do that. He told me about how he's gotta go through all this stuff to dissolve the business and everything, and how he'll pay me as soon as he can. And overall, he just avoided taking responsibility. At one point, he said something about how people were currently suing him, which honestly is not a big shock, if I wanted to, just so my debt could be added in or something like that. I said, fine, give me their names and numbers. But guess what? He never even did that. Eventually, I realized that nothing was ever going to come of this, and I was just gonna be out the money I was owed. But while I'd be doing the work for him, I had emailed back and forth with his wife maybe a dozen times. To this day, I've never met his wife. I've never spoken with her, just communicated through email and text messaging. But she seemed really nice, and she had told me something like, well, Richard won't tell you this, but he doesn't really know what he's gonna do with the business, and I know you've been a big help. So I just got the idea that, you know what? This next email I send to Richard about trying to get my money, I'm going to include his wife in on it too, just so she knows how much he sucks. I heard back from her almost right away, and she was like, I'm so sorry about this. Please keep me posted on what happens. Then suddenly, just like magic, Richard started talking about making a payment schedule. He started sending me $100 every month, and the debt got down to about $1,000. I figured that his wife must have gotten on his case about it, and I laughed to myself about how whipped old Richard really was. But then the money suddenly stopped again. The excuses started coming in, and one day, he told me he was just going through a hard time financially right now, which I knew was utter garbage. He still had the nice car, the nice house, etc., but it's not like I had a printout of his bank records that I could easily use to try and call him out on this. On that exact day that he told me this though, I was watching the local pro team's baseball game later that night, and who did I see but Richard himself? And he was in great seats no less, second row right in front, just off to the right. Every time they zoomed in on a right-handed batter, you could clearly see him. And this was in September, in the midst of a playoff race, so those tickets were not cheap. It's no Perry Mason moment, but the thought of replying to his "I'm having financial trouble" email with a picture of him in those seats and me being like, yeah, I can see that, gave me the best justice idea ever. So I was looking for a good image of him to use, but every time I paused the video, his face got somewhat out of focus. It was clearly him if you watch the video, but I needed a still image that was also clearly him. Then, in the 7th inning, a foul ball got caught about 2 rows behind him, and they zoomed in on that area of the crowd. And there was Richard, clear as day, sitting with his wife of all people. I'm thinking to myself, oh, I got you now. The next morning, I replied to his previous message by sending the screen capture to him. I figured even if I didn't get my money, at least I had that one sweet moment of satisfaction of busting him there. Then, almost at the last second, I decided to send it to his wife too, just so she would know what was going on and how the money had stopped again. And remember how quickly Richard's tune had changed that first time I included her? I even thought that maybe her being in the picture would make her light a fire underneath his butt this time. So I sent it, but I didn't hear anything back from either of them. 2-3 days go by and still nothing. Then I heard from the other employee that I'd worked with. He says, hey, did you hear about Richard? I said to them, no, what happened? They say to me, his wife kicked him out and filed for divorce. I'm saying to myself, there's no way. They say to him, yeah, apparently she caught him cheating on her. I responded to my friend by saying the following, I wonder how. Okay, you know what would be crazy? What if that wasn't his wife in that picture? And I sent her that picture and no way. He was probably talking about divorce when he mentioned having financial trouble. I mean, that would make sense. The divorce was already in the works before the picture. There's literally no chance whatsoever that I inadvertently told his wife that he was cheating on her, right? I mean, come on, there's no way that happened. But guess what? That is exactly what happened. The woman at the game was not his wife. Apparently his wife knew the woman though, and knew that Richard had lied about where he was that night and who he was with. And an absolute storm of garbage of epic proportions quickly followed after that. I ended up emailing her not long after and being like, hello? I've been hearing some things and I can't help but think that picture I sent might have been a part of this. And she said that she'd been meaning to contact me, and she actually thanked me. She said she wanted out of the marriage anyways, and she said she might need me as a witness, but I didn't know what for. I mean, are divorces like a trial or something like that? But anyways, she paid me the $1,000 he owed me, plus another $500 on top of that. I don't know if she thought he still owed me $1,500, or if she did that on purpose to try and give me some extra. And thankfully, I didn't have to be a witness for anything, which honestly was good. Also, you remember how Richard has a nice car and a nice house and all that? Well, his wife was the one with the money, meaning that he no longer has it. They got divorced and he moved away, and I have no idea what became of him. Honestly, considering everything that happened, I feel kinda bad for him. But then I remember there's no reason he couldn't have just paid me. Seriously, why not just pay me? He had the money, but I honestly chalk it up to Richard having a lot of negative karma coming his way, and I just so happened to play a part in catching him in it. Wow, that's honestly insane. You were just trying to get your money. You literally were not trying to break up this marriage. So when you saw him at the game and you sent that picture, you were literally just trying to get back at this guy. And honestly, I don't blame you. He owed you over $1,000. I don't know about you, but working for free and not having your paycheck come in really does suck. It basically makes what you're doing a complete waste of time. So good for you for standing up for yourself and in a way basically tearing this guy down. This guy absolutely had it coming. He was clearly never gonna pay you, and you are 100% right. His bad karma was coming his way one way or another, but it's really cool to see that you were the one to help tip the scales. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I served my husband divorce papers after he posted a reel on Instagram making fun of my weight, and now I'm not sure if I went too far or if I overreacted. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So for a bit of context, it's been over a month since this happened. I'm a 32-year-old female and my husband is 30 years old, and we've been married for 3 years now, together for 5. Our marriage isn't perfect, but we make it work. We both were fairly in shape when we first got together, but I gained a lot of weight when we had our kid and haven't since then. We are also all Indians, and it's somewhat acceptable to pull each other's legs. Mostly family does it, and there isn't really any malicious intent. So my husband routinely teases me about my weight gain, but I know that he loves me, and I try not to take it personally. Because even I tease him about how long he takes in the shower, and how obsessed he is with styling himself in front of the mirror, innocent stuff like that. Well, my husband has quite the following on Instagram, and usually posts a lot of reels, and it's usually harmless and it's just fun stuff. I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw a reel about me, how much he loves me and all that, and I thought that it was sweet, but immediately after that, I saw another one, and this one was also about me. It was a 5 years ago versus now picture of the both of us, with a background voiceover. It said the following: before wedding, my responsibility was 55 kilos. Now it is 75 kilos, and it keeps on increasing. This was then followed up by a cackling sound. Now, I don't know what happened, but when I saw this, a switch flipped inside of me. I felt humiliated and ashamed of myself in a way I had never felt before. I felt anger and hurt at my husband for something that was normal ribbing for the both of us. My husband was away on a work trip, so I didn't contact him. I went through some other online forums to try and find advice on similar situations, and most people advise serving divorce papers, and it made me wonder, should I do something like that? Well, cut to the present, and yes, I left divorce papers on his nightstand and went to my friend's house, and that was 2 days ago. The entire family, including him and my parents, have been hurling insults at me for bringing shame to their family. They told me there's no concept of divorce in our culture, and I should just keep my mouth shut of all this feminist garbage, as they put it, and come home to tend to my family, because as a wife and a mother, that's what I'm supposed to do. They also said that nobody will marry me because I am trying to be a divorcee, and this is true in my culture. My husband said that he didn't think I'd snap at him like that, and thought that this warrants a conversation if it really did hurt so badly. I think I may have gone too far, and I may be at risk of being disowned by my family. Should I just accept this compromise? Was I being too dramatic? What should I do? Honestly, from the way you've made this sound, it really does seem like we went from being insulted on the internet all the way to saying, hey, let's get a divorce. Like, I don't know about you, but this seems like such an extreme step. Sure, what he did was incredibly rude. This was seriously hurtful, and it really hurt your feelings. He made fun of your weight online, and he shared it with everybody that he knows. That's not fair, you didn't consent to that, and I don't blame you for being upset. But instead of talking to him ahead of time and being like, hey, I want you to take that down, that really hurt my feelings and I don't like that, or some kind of conversation like that, you instead took the advice of the internet and said, okay, divorce is the next step. Not counseling, not talking through it, not having some kind of intervention, not even expressing your feelings about how that made you feel. Nothing like that. Nope, it's time to get a divorce. In my opinion, I think this is going way too fast. Yes, he does need to apologize. And yes, it seems like some boundaries need to be made between the two of you. You really can say, hey, I don't want to be made fun of anymore and I want this to stop. Stop making fun of my weight and all that stuff. And have some kind of conversation and try and work on everything between the two of you instead of dropping everything in front of you and saying, yep, I'm getting divorced. I don't know, maybe there's other things going on that the original poster is not sharing in this regard, but it really seems from my perspective that this is going way too fast. And sure, I completely recognize that maybe there's some cultural differences here that I'm not getting. Like clearly there is something I might be missing in this regard, so if you do know more about this culture and you have better insight on what's actually happening here, I would love to hear what you have to say. Please leave a comment down below, because if there is some kind of clarification here, I would love to hear about it. So hopefully something can change here, because yes, he did hurt your feelings, but in my opinion, I don't think you should suddenly jump to divorce just because he did something that embarrassed you online. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay my sister's mortgage despite the fact that we do have the money after I won the lottery? Here's what happened. So to start things out, I did not pay for my sister's mortgage despite paying my parents' mortgage off and financially helping my friend. For some context, I make a lot more money than my sister, and I already pay for her kids' schooling, extracurriculars, and have a college fund for each of them. I also won the lottery recently. My husband and I keep our money private, including the lottery. After my parents' house got destroyed by a hurricane, I paid for a new one for them because they didn't have the funds. Also, my friend got money stolen from her, but she had no evidence. I helped her get back on her feet and paid for her rent for nearly 2 years. Now, my sister and I have never been friends, as I have always been more nerdy and into school, while she was more into athletics and in the arts. She would always bully me as I was the favorite child. Once, she even left me at a park overnight because, according to her, she didn't love me and she hoped I would get taken away. It was a miracle that I didn't. Of course, my parents dealt with her harshly, which made her hate me even more. One night, my husband and I were out with friends drinking, and I got drunk and accidentally said something about our money, and my friend told my entire family. My parents said nothing, but my sister started going out of her way to do nice things. I paid for a vacation for my parents, my husband's parents, myself, my husband, and our kids, while also including my sister and her husband, as well as her husband's parents. It was short, but it was a nice get-together. So I really do nice things for my family overall. One day, my sister calls me asking if I could pay off her mortgage and pay for a vacation for her and her family to 4 different places over the summer, totaling to around $100,000 or more. But I told her that I couldn't do it as it was a lot of money. She then screamed at me saying she knows I have the funds. Now, although I do, I am saving my money for retirement and emergencies that might come up, and I don't want to spend it recklessly. I am already paying for all of her kids' schooling. She tells me she has always loved me and been so kind, but I reminded her of several events in our childhood which she absolutely denies, such as leaving me at the park overnight and hoping I get taken away, or breaking my arm on purpose, or using her height and athletic ability just to hurt me. She has complained to my parents, and a lot of extended family members are taking her side. Now, my extended family knows I have money and have started being really kind and sometimes asking me for things, and it honestly feels like everybody is now a vulture except for my parents, thank God. Some of my relatives won't even talk to me now that I've refused money, but they all started in the same way. They say stuff like, how's your family? How are you? How's the kids? How's your husband in life? Are you doing all right? And then after about a 3-minute conversation, they start asking for money. One specific case on my husband's side was so bad. He has an uncle who came to me begging for money, claiming that he was out of it. I told him I couldn't give him anything, as it was in trust and retirement funds that I couldn't access. I got to the point where he broke all of my plates from my deceased grandmother, and I was very angry, but I tried to stay calm and collected. Eventually, though, he did storm out. My husband then told me that he did have money. In fact, he had a little over $200,000 left for his retirement. He broke my plates from my grandmother, who I was incredibly close with, and he did it all for nothing. And I honestly was crying for half the night about that. Now, remember, once the cat is out of the bag, I'll never get it back in. I really hope somebody else gets a ton of money so I won't be badgered anymore. Now, so far, I haven't paid for anything besides that vacation, as well as my parents' mortgage and financially helping out my friend and for my sister's children. But I am not paying for anything else, especially not my sister. Maybe I should even stop paying for her children's schooling and activities and take out the college funds for her children and just save that money for me and my children. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? First and foremost, I don't think you're the jerk in this situation. Your immediate family and your extended family, minus your parents, who are thankfully cool about this, they are all acting like complete morons. They are only coming out of the woodwork works so they can try and squeeze some money out of you and your husband. And that's not fair in the slightest, because you have it right. Once the cat is out of the bag for this type of stuff, it's never going back in. People will always be coming after you. And unfortunately, I think that's going to be the case for a long time. And it really sucks that you had a moment of weakness and you were drunk and you talked about all the money that you had, because that honestly was the biggest mistake you could have made. Because that kind of rumor is going to spread like wildfire. You will never be able to put that toothpaste back in the tube. Now, when it comes to paying for your sister's mortgage and her children's stuff, I think personally, if I was in your shoes, I would personally keep the commitments that I had already agreed to, just to avoid any potential legal drama that might happen. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of loaded. It sounds like you have a lot of money at your disposal, and the last thing you need is some kind of lawsuit, all because you pull out the college fund or something like that. Remember, people can sue you for whatever they want, even if it's some kind of illegitimate reason. But I think with that in mind, I would personally refuse to pay for anything else moving forward. I think the excuse you use with your uncle, whether it was legitimate or not, of saying that all the money is in retirement funds or in trust funds, might be a good way to stay out of this conversation and protect your financial assets. Because remember, this is your money after all. You have it, it's yours, it's under your name, and you really are not obligated to have to pay for anything. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you have to fork it over at the drop of a hat. That, in my opinion, is really weird and honestly really ridiculous, and hopefully for the sake of you and your kids, things get a lot better relatively soon. Am I the jerk for telling my son's pregnant girlfriend that if she keeps disrespecting me, then she will not be living in my house? Here's what happened. So I have a son who got his high school girlfriend pregnant. It was obviously an unplanned pregnancy, and it resulted in my son's girlfriend getting kicked out of her house by her mom. Now, I never liked this girl, but I obviously couldn't let her stay on the streets now that she's carrying my grandchild. So I let her live in our house. Now, both she and my son gave up on college for the near future, and my son is now working a full-time job so he can provide for them in the future. The problem is that his girlfriend refuses to do anything, but will absolutely all day just lock herself in my son's room, eating snacks and watching videos on my son's computer. I need to drag her out to just help me with cooking and to clean up at least the room she's staying in. But she's always complaining about how I'm working her like a dog, even though she's already in constant pain because of her pregnancy. And then she'll come crying to my son about my treatment of her. Mind you, she doesn't have a high-risk pregnancy. And I know this because my husband and I are the ones fully paying for her medical controls. And I don't put her up to doing tasks like cleaning the toilet or anything similar. But she really did cross the line. After I got dressed up, she asked me where I was going. And when I told her that I'm getting ready for church, her exact response was to say, "I didn't know that there were churches that allowed people in that looked like a lady of the night." At that point, I absolutely had it with her. And I told her straight up that I don't care who she is. I won't allow her to disrespect me while living in my house. And if she can't keep her attitude in check, then she can get out of my house. She pretty much started crying at that point and immediately called my son, who later on also gave me an attitude for treating his girlfriend like garbage when apparently I don't know what she's going through. My husband also thinks that while she was definitely out of line with that, she was probably only acting out because of pregnancy hormones, and that I could have handled the situation better without straight up threatening to leave her homeless. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. She needs to start being more agreeable around the house. She can't just stay in that room all day and do nothing. That is seriously not okay. She has to earn her keep just like everybody else, and she has to be respectful of the house she's staying in. So her talking to you like that is completely inappropriate. And look, I get the situation. You not only don't like her, but you never expected her living with you after your son got her pregnant. The situation sucks, and I'm really sorry you're going through it. But if she wants to expect to have any kind of home in your house, then in my opinion, she needs to start learning respect and earning her keep around the house. Otherwise, in my opinion, there's definitely going to be problems. An entitled preacher and his assistant go to my grandmother's deathbed demanding that she write them and the church into her will. But after being deeply hurt and highly offended by their hypocrisy, my grandmother, even beyond the grave, decided to get some revenge by exposing them for the awful people that they really were, as well as humiliating them in front of the entire community. And I've never been happier to witness this all firsthand in my life. Here's what happened. So my grandmother was a member of a large conservative Bible-believing church for her entire adult life. This church, which I'll call Big White Church, was a member of a large evangelical denomination. Big White Church was located in a prosperous suburb of a large city in the Bible Belt of the deep south of the US. Now, Grandma was very active in Big big white church. She worked in the nursery every Sunday morning, helped cook hundreds of church fellowship breakfasts and dinners, accompanied her children and grandchildren on dozens of church retreats and choir tours, taught youth Bible study on Sunday nights, and was very active in supporting home missions, as well as helping with our youth programs. She always paid her tithing and often gave extra for missions and special offerings. Grandma's greatest talent was making other people feel important. I've seen this firsthand many times. Although I belonged to a different church, I often visited with Grandma, and when I did, I usually went to big white church functions with her. I've seen her single-handedly cook breakfast for dozens of big white church youth members, which is a task that took over 2 hours, even in the church's large kitchen. Then, after the meal, she asked the group for a round of applause for the high school student leader for doing such a great job of organizing the prayer breakfast. I remember that on a church youth retreat at a rural church camp, she drove most of the night to go back to the city and retrieve a big box of evangelical materials that one of the assistant pastors had forgotten and asked her to go get. And this was all in time for our morning program the next day. His senior, the senior pastor, never found out that the assistant pastor had messed up or that my grandma had fixed it for him. And the assistant pastor never even thanked my grandma. Even though I was a child, this bothered me so much that I ended up asking her about it, but she said that she didn't mind at all. She told me that her reward would be that those materials would help children find Jesus. So overall, my grandma was just a good person. But unfortunately, the church would try to take advantage of my grandma in the worst way I could even imagine. Now, my grandma's service to her church ended abruptly at the age of 73, and that's when she broke her back in a car accident. Afterwards, for the last 10 years of her life, she was homebound and could not go to church because of this injury and declining health due to old age. Her mind was just as sharp as ever, and her faith remained sincere, but her body wore out a little more every day. During those 10 years, she made many efforts to reach out to the church, its leadership, and her church friends, inviting them to visit her at her home, etc. But it was all absolutely without success. Every one of those invitations was declined or simply ignored. Near the end, when she was in home hospice care, she decided to plan her own funeral. She and my grandpa called her church and asked for the senior pastor, whom she had known for over 30 years, to visit her so that they could plan the memorial service, which she and grandpa wanted to be held at the church. Now, the pastor was too busy, but the assistant pastor stopped by a few days later. According to my grandpa, here's what happened at that meeting with my grandma literally on her deathbed. My grandma, grandpa, and the assistant pastor discussed her funeral for a couple of minutes. Then the assistant pastor started pressuring her. He said to her, "You need to lay up your treasure in heaven by remembering your church in your will." But my grandpa interrupted him and firmly told him that this is neither the time nor the place to discuss her will. They went back to discussing the funeral for a few minutes. Then the assistant pastor steered the conversation back to my grandma's will, with liberal injections of how badly her church needed her support. Grandpa told him several times that it was inappropriate to talk to grandma about her will or the church's financial needs because she was terminally ill and in an enormous amount of pain physically. The assistant pastor would agree and briefly talk about the funeral, but would then go back to talking about the church's financial needs, as well as heavenly rewards, while also quoting scripture. It was at this point that my grandma started to cry. To put this into context, my grandma was more than a steel magnolia. She was titanium coated with diamond wrapped in Kevlar. She rarely ever cried, and never ever cried about herself. Not one tear when the doctor told her that her back was broken so badly that she would never walk again, nor during the following 6 months in futile rehab. She would shed sincere but well-managed tears at funerals and while visiting family members in the hospital when they received bad news. She would cry to console others, and she would weep with those who weep. But nobody, not grandpa, not her daughter, nor any of my uncles or grandma's siblings, ever remembered her crying for herself. My grandma was sobbing uncontrollably. My grandfather, who's a retired steelworker, a former Marine sergeant, and a Korean War combat veteran, physically grabbed the pastor and escorted him out of their house. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Grandma lived for another 6 months, mostly because of sheer force of will. Eventually, though, Grandma passed away, and we held her memorial service at the funeral home, not the big white church. The senior pastor and the assistant pastor were conspicuously absent. In fact, there were no professional Christians from the big white church. They were not at the service at all, not even in the audience. To start the service, Grandpa stood at the podium in front of the crowd and said the following: "Some of you may have heard that I disinvited the senior pastor and the assistant pastor from this funeral service. This service is not an appropriate place for me to give you my reasons for doing so, although you all know me, and so you know that my reasons are good ones. Also, my wife asked me to exclude them. This funeral service may be different from other funerals that you have attended. It is going to be an open microphone funeral. Everyone who wants to say something is invited to come up here and describe your friendship with my wife. Tell a story about her that is worth remembering, or anything else you want to say that will honor her memory and bring comfort to everyone here today. I have asked several family members to prepare statements, but you don't have to have anything prepared. Please, if you want to say something, come up here and do so. There were about 100 people at the funeral service. At least a third of them eventually stepped up to the microphone. The service, which had planned to last about 30 minutes, lasted over 2 hours, and as best as I can tell, not one person left early. There was laughing, crying, and hugging. 3 of my grandchildren played some of her favorite songs on the piano and guitar. We all joined hands and sang her favorite hymns. Afterwards, dozens of people told my grandfather that it was one of the most comforting and uplifting funerals they had ever attended. More than a few had remarked that funerals are better without preachers anyways, or something like that. Fast forward, and a couple of weeks later, it was time to start distributing what was in my grandma's will. Although Grandma and Grandpa dearly loved each other, they had separate wills because, as she told my mom, that makes it easier for us to respect each other's turf, and because their lawyer had recommended it. Nobody thought that my grandparents were wealthy. They had lived in the same small but charming house in a prosperous, well-maintained suburban neighborhood for the past 50 years, and had worked hard and lived modestly, but it was rumored that they had a very nice nest egg. Of course, there is no legal requirements for anyone to attend the reading of the will, or to even have a reading. Modern telecommunications and near universal literacy have made this quaint custom practically extinct, but the reading of the will was a tradition in our family because it was one of those events that gave our close-knit extended family an excuse to get together. We never had family reunions. They were too difficult to schedule for our large family, but we got together at birthdays, holidays, funerals, baptisms, you name it. So if you attended several of these, you would see just about every one of your cousins, aunts, uncles, and even great aunts and uncles who were grandma's and grandpa's siblings and in-laws. With this family tradition in mind, many of our family members' wills often contained very personal items that had very little cash value, but were the departed family members' way of telling their loved ones that they wanted to share a cherished memory with them one last time. As an added incentive to attend, the family rumor mill had been buzzing with speculation, encouraged by my grandfather, that my grandmother's will contain some surprises. The reading was held in a conference room at a lawyer's office. Unsurprisingly, the attendees included my mom, as well as aunts, uncles, great uncles, and many of the grandchildren. We were all surprised, however, to see the senior and assistant pastor from Big White Church. They informed us that Grandma's lawyer had told them that Grandma's will had something not only for the Big White Church, but also for them personally. Now, maybe this was just our imagination, but my siblings, my cousins, and myself couldn't help notice that these preachers appeared to be actively salivating over their good fortune at my grandma's generosity. Grandma had a large family, so a sizable number of beneficiaries were named in her will. The lawyer's conference room was a bit smaller than an average middle-class living room. Extra chairs had been brought in, every seat was filled, and people were standing in every remaining space. There was barely space for all of us. Grandma's lawyer suggested that the senior pastor and the assistant pastor sit in chairs which were in the front of the room, next to himself. Since there was a large table in the room, this meant that the lawyer and these two preachers were the only ones who were directly facing everyone else. Although the preachers were gratified to be physically next to the center of attention, they did not notice, as all of the rest of us quickly noticed, that these seats made it easy for everyone else in the room to watch them closely, and practically impossible for them to leave the overflowing room before the entire meeting was over. And this is because they were the furthest from the room's single door, and there were almost 24 people standing or sitting between them, and it was their only path to escape. Now, the gifts in the will were very generous, but pretty much what we had expected. Grandpa kept their house, its contents, their retirement accounts, and everything that remained after everything was satisfied. Children, grandchildren, and several local charities received nice, but not extravagant amounts of money. Several sentimental items were named and given to various friends and relatives. Grandpa was the first beneficiary listed in the will, but after him, all of the other bequests were arranged in order of increasing worth. They started with sentimental items, which had very small cash value. Then each grandchild received several thousands of dollars. Then each son, daughter, brother, sister, niece, and nephew received a little bit more. Then several local nonprofits received very nice amounts of money, and on it went. The bequests to the big white church, the senior pastor, and the assistant pastor were almost the last one listed in the will. They listened politely to the other people, but with steadily growing anticipation as they noticed the exponentially upward trend in Grandma's will. When Grandma's lawyer got to the big white church and the preacher's part of the will, he said, "This is a bit unusual, but before I announce these bequests to the big white church, as well as to the senior pastor and the assistant pastor, the grandmother requested that I read the following statement to everybody present." He opened a letter that was written in Grandma's own handwriting, and this is what it had to say. "For the past 10 years, not one person from Big White Church has ever called me. They've never come to visit me or sent me a note to tell me that they cared about me. Not one minister, not one deacon, not one of the church women, not even a church member who I worked with for all those years and loved dearly and thought that they were my friends. None of them showed up. I worked very hard for you when you needed me for many, many years. But when I needed you in your church, you all pretended that I didn't exist. I only got one visit when I was dying, and I invited the senior pastor to come to my house and help me plan my funeral. This was my last attempt after many attempts that I made over the past 10 years, just to reach out to my church and pastor, whom I still love dearly, even though they had made it clear that they did not love me. If only I could have my funeral at my church. Maybe some of my church friends, whom I had not seen in a decade, would come to the service to see me one last time. And I know they love to hear the senior pastor preach. So if he preached at my funeral, maybe they would come to my funeral to hear me, even if they would not have come to see me. But the senior pastor couldn't find the time to visit me, or even call me to tell me whether or not he was willing to preach at my funeral. The senior pastor came to my house, but he didn't want to talk about my funeral. He just wanted me to remember his church in my will. That's all. Just remember his church in my will. It was then that I realized I had allowed my church to break my heart for one last time. But that was the last time, the very last time. The assistant pastor did not know it when he visited me, but Grandpa and I had already prepared my will long before his visit, which did include a double tithe, literally 20% of my entire estate, for what was now my former, very former church, the Big White Church. This amount was going to be at a significant amount. The lawyer then named the amount, and it was an enormous amount of money. It generated muffled wows from many of her heirs, including me. The letter continues, "But I got the feeling badly that we had not personally remembered such nice people as the senior pastor and the assistant pastor, so I changed my will to include them by name. While I was at it, I changed the amount of money that I left to the Big White Church to match all the love that they have shown me during the last 10 years of my life, when I was suffering and lonely, and no longer able to work my butt off for them for free, like I had done for almost half a century." The lawyer then said that is her entire written statement. Now let's get back to the bequests in the will. The assistant pastor gets 1 cent, the senior pastor gets 1 cent, and the Big White Church gets 1 cent. The senior and assistant pastor sat there looking like someone had just injected a gallon of Novocaine into their jaws. Every one of Grandma's family and friends felt an overwhelming urge to laugh out loud, but we kept quiet because we knew my grandma. We knew she wasn't finished yet. Grandma was simply setting them up for a 1-2 punch. The best was yet to come, and we didn't want to miss it. "There is one last bequest," the lawyer continued, "and this one goes to a charity." The lawyer named it, and for the sake of this story, I'll just call it the Black Charity. He then paused before naming the amount. Now, most of us had no idea what the Black Charity was, but by the looks on their faces, we could tell that the senior and assistant pastor knew about the Black Charity very well. Their faces displayed the same expression of shock, dread, and horror that they would have had if the lawyer had said that this money is going to the demonic baby eaters to buy extra large rotisserie barbecue grills and tons of charcoal. Every eye in the room was now fixated on the pastors. The lawyer, who happened to be my uncle, one of my grandma and grandpa's sons, let the silence continue a few more seconds. Now, if we had been able to read the pastors' minds, we would have known the history behind the looks on their faces. The Black Charity was sponsored by a large black church just a few miles from the Big White Church. They ran a free food and clothing bank, assistance programs for foster children, home delivery of pre-cooked meals for homebound seniors, legal aid, and other social services. A long time ago, the Big White Church, which was and still is 100% Caucasian, had provided a few years of financial and other support to the Black Charity charity. Then there was a very bitter, acrimonious breakup, allegedly because the black charity was practicing the social gossip, while the big white church was preaching the true gospel. The big white church even sued to try and get some of their money back, although the suit was eventually settled and very little money actually changed hands. But this being the Deep South, everyone knew the real reason why the big white church or any white church would suddenly stop supporting a black charity. And basically it boiled down to the fact that they were racist. Grandma and Grandpa had seriously considered leaving big white church at that time, but they had reasoned that it was better to stay there and teach tolerance by their words and example. They knew they would never persuade everybody, but maybe they could reach some of the youth at their white church and break the generational cycle of racism. Grandma used to tell us, "My church is a mission field," and we did not learn the true depth of her statement until after she passed away. Since then, Grandma and Grandpa had secretly sent a portion of their tithe to the black charity every month. Most of Grandma's family, including me, didn't find out about any of this until after the meeting had ended, but the senior and assistant pastor obviously understood what Grandma, by her actions which are more powerful than words, was saying to them. If you had grown up as a white person in the Deep South as Grandma and Grandpa, as well as the senior and assistant pastor had, then you would understand. To many white Southerners, this was one of the most personally insulting things you could do to them. It simultaneously labeled them as racist and condemned their awful behavior and crushed their delusions. Having allowed time for everyone to observe the senior and assistant pastor while they thought about how their white church had treated this black charity and how they and their church had treated our grandma, the lawyer then said the amount of money that was going to this charity. And they named the exact amount of money that my grandma had named in her handwritten letter, which was the huge amount of money that would have gone to the big white church if she had not changed her will. My grandma was one of the sweetest, most generous, forgiving, and charming people I've ever met. She was not vindictive at all in the slightest. But honestly, everybody has their limits. Being her grandson is one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because of her, my grandfather, and other members of my family, plus my many friends, I am truly rich in all the things that really matter. Man, this story really hit some hard points. Like, first and foremost, those pastors should be ashamed of themselves, including all of the supposed friends from that church. Like, seriously, they are awful people. They're the typical person who doesn't practice what they preach, and they don't look after somebody who did so much for them. I mean, seriously, this grandma was very devoted to her faith. She did everything as a volunteer, she did a thankless job to try and help these awful people out, and she considered it her mission to try and help these people see the error of their ways. That is some serious dedication. If I knew exactly what this grandmother knew about these people and the way they treated that other charity, I probably would have left and been like, no, I'm not going here. But it takes some serious guts to be like, no, I'm gonna try and help them out. I'm gonna help them see what's wrong with the way they think, and I'm gonna try and lead the children away from this horrible way of thinking. Like, that's honestly such a noble thing to do, and she was probably one of the only people who actually practice her beliefs. Like, she literally drove out of her way just to cover the stupid assistant pastor, only to then have them go into her home, literally on her deathbed, and be like, remember your church, you gotta give us money at the end of the day. Well, guess what, buddy? She was already planning on doing that until you came in there and tried to do some mafia shakedown. Like, seriously, what is his problem? Who in their right mind would go into somebody's home and be like, hey, you need to pay us, remember? Yeah, sure, the funeral, you're passing away, we get it. But no, you gotta give us money because, you know, you gotta lay your treasures up in heaven. Like, dude, what are you talking about right now? You're insane. This is so unbelievably inappropriate, it's honestly not even funny. I can only imagine how angry the grandfather was, as well as the restraint he had towards that assistant pastor. Like, seriously, anybody who uses their religion to try and squeeze money out of your pockets or try and make you feel bad or guilt trip you into giving them money, they are an awful person. I don't care what religion you're from. It's one thing to give like a charitable donation of some kind, or even like a tithe or some kind of like donation of your own free will, but it's another thing to have some absolute jerk come in there and basically shake the money out of you. And not to mention the fact that they're only coming into her house because she's passing away and they thought there was some kind of pretty penny to get out of her. Meanwhile, she broke her back and it's been 10 years since anybody showed up. None of her friends, none of the religious leadership, literally nobody came to her aid. And that's not fair in the slightest. But the way that this grandma got back at these people was absolutely beautiful. They stuffed those stupid preachers right at the front of the row. They wanted them front and center so everybody could see their shame. And they got exactly what they deserved. Absolutely nothing. Because their demeanor is hardly that of somebody who follows their religion. They were only there to try and get money out of this woman and take advantage of her one last time, even from the grave. But honestly, in my opinion, the way she got back at these people was absolutely beautiful. She threw them right under the bus and knew exactly where to hit them the hardest. So good for her as well as your family for being able to find some kind of resolution for this issue. Your grandma sounded like an awesome lady, and she sounded like someone who absolutely practiced what she preached. And the fact that she was still able to get back at these people while still giving to a really good cause is honestly the best kind of karma anybody could have ever wanted. My entitled boss plans on firing me after I'm asked to hire a fourth member of our team who would in this case be my replacement that I would be training. So I decided to get some revenge, and I hired the worst person for the job who didn't know what they were doing and who was very sloppy when it came to customer service. And as a result, my department tanked once I left, and my manager ended up getting fired as well. And I've never been happier to get revenge on somebody in my life. Here's what happened. I first off want to say that all names in this story are fake. So this was a small company, and our team of 3 were best described as tech support for our clients, but it went a bit further than that. I usually helped with setting up databases and also advised clients from time to time if they would benefit from upgrading their plan. As normal with tech support, we get tickets from the clients and would work away with them one by one. I like the challenging problems and usually tried to work hard at them, and it just so happened that my coworker Caroline liked the more standard problems and enjoyed doing something she already knew over something new every single day. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and as you might imagine, we made a great team and had this kind of unwritten rule about who took which tickets. It was a win-win situation for me, Caroline, the company, and the client. Well, that is until I got a new boss by the name of Bob. He immediately noticed that I was working far fewer tickets than Caroline. I tried to explain to him how not every ticket is the same workload, but because he wasn't very tech savvy and didn't understand half the stuff I was doing, he did not understand what was going on. Also, around 1 month later, we got a huge new client, and I spent a week on site setting up all the databases and stuff that they needed. This drew down my monthly average ticket numbers even further, so it only made sense that I didn't have a lot of tickets under my belt. Now, if Bob would have only had half a brain cell, he could have figured out why that was. But now came something that I honestly did not expect from Bob. He said we need more help on the team, and he was approved to hire a fourth member for our team. Now, I was excited. We all were. We had this new huge client, and things were not yet running smoothly, and our company was expanding fast, so this actually made sense. And he specifically asked me to basically do the recruiting process, as well as to work the new guy in, which I was completely happy to do. And honestly, this should have been my first clue that my boss was trying to set me up for failure by essentially making me train my replacement. Now, that same night, Hans gives me a call, which is weird because Hans is not a caller, he's more of a texter, and he basically said, "You should come over to my house tomorrow because I have some beers that need drinking." So the next day, I get to Hans's house, and we're just talking about normal stuff. We see each other maybe once per month and have a big overlapping friend pool, but this time it was just me and him drinking beers, no other friends around. After some beers, he mentioned that he just updated his resume the day before, and that everyone should always have an updated resume on hand. He then asked me if I had an up-to-date resume, and I felt this was a weird question, and I had an idea where this was going, so I said no. But then I asked him, well, should I have one updated? Is there something that you know that I don't that you might want to tell me? He then says, well, I'm just saying that everyone should have a resume ready, but I couldn't tell you if Bob is thinking about replacing you, but I also couldn't tell you that Bob is thinking about letting you go. And when he said that, I knew exactly what he was trying to say. So I thanked him very much for the beers, and I left shortly after that. So now I know I'm going to be fired, and I have a suspicion that Bob has just asked me to hire my own replacement and train him to do my job so that he can take it. And this is where my sweet malicious compliance and revenge comes into play. I fully comply with hiring a fourth member of the team and also pick one that's best suited for what Bob wants, because Bob wants high ticket numbers. So I'm thinking I need someone who's not so smart, with a sloppy attitude that does not care if the customer is happy. After all, customer satisfaction was not important to Bob when he talked about my ticket numbers. So I get right on it. Many people apply, some good ones, but I weed those out very quickly. Resumes with lots of spelling mistakes and very little experience in my sector are the ones that I invite for an interview. The interview stage is trickier because now Bob and someone from HR is sitting in with me, but I am still asking most of the questions and giving my opinions on the candidate candidates. But because I weeded out the good ones, when Bob makes a decision, he just chose the best of the worst. And in my opinion, not even one of the best, because one applicant was quite good, but I asked him stupid questions that did not even make sense, and when he could not answer them, I made him look really bad. I then advise one candidate he ends up picking because he will work very fast and will get a ton of tickets done. At this point, I have another job lined up in 4 months' time, but I wanted to get fired by Bob to get some sweet severance pay. After 2 months of training the new guy, I have just shown him how to do basic tickets, which he can do quite well and fast, but makes a lot of mistakes. And I have let the hard ones slowly build up. Carl, my other coworker, notices this, and as he would be the only one after my firing to be able to handle these complicated ones, I let him in on what I'm doing. Now, as chances will have it, he had just gotten an offer from another company, and since he also did not like Bob, he already decided that he will take the offer, but said that he could sit on it for a few weeks and time it with my firing for maximum destruction. Then I tell Bob I'm done working in the new guy, and a week later, he tells me he sadly needs to let me go because my numbers had not gotten any better. He actually used against me the fact that I had not been doing many tickets while I was training the new guy. I mean, honestly, how stupid can Bob be? He also wished me a lot of luck finding a new place to work with my work ethic. Now, this had been the day I was waiting for, and I just thanked Bob and reminded him of the 4 months worth of severance that I was now owed, and also 2 months worth of vacation I had not yet taken and carried over, and I was now entitled to get paid out. As I am heading out, I tell Carl what had just happened, and he opens his drawer with a signed 2 weeks notice and walks into Bob's office. My girlfriend had vacation time left, and we decided to leave for a 4-week holiday to New Zealand the very next week, and while I was there, I proposed to her. I started my new job 1 month after returning from New Zealand, and even got a nice pay bump and an actually good boss. I made sure to thank Hans again, and he kept me in the loop on how my old department went down the drain very quickly, and Bob was let go sometime after that. When that happened, they actually approached me for taking his job, but I declined, even though that would have been the ultimate middle finger straight to Bob. Fast forward to 5 years later, which is the present day, and I started a company together with Hans, doing pretty much the same work, but in a different city, and so far, everything is going really well. You have a very good friend when it comes to Hans. He not only had your best interest in mind, but he gave you a solid heads up that, hey, Bob is going to fire you. And also, this Bob guy is an awful manager. He's one of those managers that only looks at numbers and nothing else. He doesn't realize the fact that you work very hard, and you're the one who practically carries that office. Like, seriously, you had a good thing going, you knew what you were doing, and you had a solid system down. But this Bob guy just had to come in and screw everything up. So honestly, good for you for getting out of there while you could, as well as basically ruining Bob's career at that job, because this guy let you go over stupid reasons, and in the end, he got exactly what he deserved. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for calling my daughter's father spineless, as well as his girlfriend creepy, after they named their newborn the same name as my daughter? Here's what happened. So for a little bit of context, I ended up getting pregnant with my 10-year-old daughter during a drunken hookup with a friend in my mid-20s. Not the most glamorous or flattering truth, but it's the truth all the same. When we found out, we decided to keep the child and co-parent while remaining friends. We were never a couple, and we didn't want to be one either. 4 years ago, he began to date his long-term girlfriend, and they both moved in together last year. She got pregnant, and I've been supportive to the both of them as much as I could without crossing any lines. I've encouraged my daughter to help out whenever she's staying with them during the pregnancy, as well as to simply behave. I've also made it clear that I want the children to have a close relationship despite having different mothers. I've even said that if they're comfortable with it on nights that I have my daughter, if they ever want time alone, I'll babysit once they have the baby so my daughter can spend time with her sibling. All in all, I thought everything was great, and I was excited for my daughter to have a sibling, as she's always wanted one, but I had no interest in having another child. 3 days ago, my friend and his girlfriend had a daughter. They asked me to bring my daughter to the hospital to meet her little sister yesterday, along with other people of the family, so I did exactly that. But when they introduced us to the baby, I was shocked. They used my daughter's name for the baby. She didn't seem to have any issue with this. When she introduced this baby boldly cold as brass. My friends seemed uncomfortable and wouldn't look at me directly, so I asked them what they were playing at which point my friend's father said that he would take my daughter down to the cafeteria to get something to eat, and she left with them. My friend told me to calm down and not overreact, while his girlfriend told me that she didn't see the issue, and it was just a pretty name. I asked them if they had named the baby for my daughter, trying to understand the logic here, but his girlfriend said that no, it was just a pretty name and she liked it. I then asked if they plan on using a nickname or some kind of middle name when addressing her on a daily basis, and her response was that she didn't see a need for that. I told them that they were being ridiculous and that they couldn't do this. I then told his girlfriend that I found this incredibly creepy, and then I told my friend that he was spineless and if he was happy to go along with this. He tried to claim our daughter could use a nickname or something like that, but I shut that down immediately, asking why it was more reasonable for a girl who was used to that name for a decade to shame her name compared to a baby who had no concept of what a name was yet. His girlfriend then told me I was being a jerk for talking to her like that after she just gave birth, and then asked the nurses to remove me, saying that I was being disruptive. Now, maybe my temper is running a bit too hot, and I was maybe a bit too harsh on her after she just gave birth, but this is all just so weird. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. The fact that the father of your daughter, as well as your former hookup, is naming his new child after his current child is incredibly weird. Like seriously, is it that hard to name that baby something else? Literally any other name would have been appropriate, but they're like, no, let's pick the one name that my daughter has. It's just so pretty. Like, what are you talking about? That's insane. You can't just do that and not expect some kind of problem later on in life. And of course, the kid is not going to have any problem with it because guess what? She's 10 years old. She doesn't understand how weird this is yet, and she hasn't even seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how blatantly annoying this is going to be in her life. Literally, she has a sibling now with her exact same name. It's almost like the father is trying to have like a do-over, because it really seems like because he now has a girlfriend who he can now stick around with, he wants to try again with a baby of the same name. I don't know, it all comes across as really creepy, so I am 100% on the original poster side. So hopefully these people come to their senses and change the baby's name, because honestly, this is going to be annoying for pretty much everybody involved. Am I the jerk for walking out of a wedding that I was a part of and ruining the day for everybody after I found out that the bride is the reason why my former relationship fell apart? Here's what happened. So I first want to start off by saying all names in this story are fake. I dated my ex-boyfriend John for 4 years and got serious enough that we started planning for our future. I thought we were pretty happy, but last year he dumped me pretty suddenly. I tried to figure out what went wrong, but he said it was personal and that I should respect his space. During this time, my best friend Stacy and her fiance Tom were my rocks, letting me crash at their place and just being overwhelmingly supportive and loving. When Stacy asked me to be her maid of honor, I thought it was a no-brainer and happily took on the task. Now, fast forward to what happened this weekend. The morning of the wedding, Tom asked me to meet him for breakfast super early in the morning before all of the festivities. Now, I thought it was weird, but I assumed he maybe wanted me to pass something on to Stacy. What happened instead was that Tom let me know that a few days prior, Stacy admitted to him that she had an affair with John, which was what led to my breakup. He said that Stacy wanted to come clean to start their marriage fresh, and that he was forgiving her to move forward. He had gone back and forth between telling me and finally decided to spill the beans. I guess he had expected me to forgive Stacy as well because the affair was so long ago, but the opposite pretty much happened. I just walked out on the wedding. It ended up being such a huge mess because I was basically running the whole show. Stacy made me do everything, so she didn't even know what was happening at certain times or who to call. And not only that, but everyone realized that the maid of honor wasn't there. She had headshots and bios of the party on her wedding page, and news of the affair eventually got out because her cousin knew John. Stacy and Tom have both been slandering me online now, saying that I ruined their once-in-a-lifetime moment. Some of their friends are on their side, saying that I should have handled the situation more privately and at least stuck out the wedding since it was so last minute. I personally don't know what Tom expected, but either way, I've been getting bombarded with text messages, and I heard that Stacy has been so upset that she's had to take time off work, which does make me feel like a jerk, especially since I've just been ignoring her calls. So am I the jerk in this situation for walking out on this wedding? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. Maybe I'm heartless, maybe I'm a jerk as well, but this lady is the reason that John broke up with you. Not only did she ruin your relationship, but you also are finding out that John cheated on you. And that is so devastating. Like, seriously, that's not okay. And the fact that she made you not only the maid of honor, but had you schedule all this stuff and coordinate all of the things associated with her wedding, while simultaneously trying to make amends for cheating on her husband, as well as ruining your relationship, with the expectation that Tom and yourself would just forgive her, is, in my opinion, unbelievably toxic. That is so messed up. She did that on the morning of her wedding. Like, is she crazy? If I was a maid of honor in that situation, there's no way I would have helped her out. I would have said, nope, you are on your own. I am not helping you. There's no way I'm letting this slide. And honestly, why should you? She ruined your relationship. The person you thought was your rock in this awful situation, she's the one that actually went behind your back and betrayed your trust. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I would have done the exact same thing. That Stacy lady sounds like an absolute snake, and you have no obligation to try and help her out with anything. And honestly, you walking out on the wedding is better than you causing a huge scene. You could have waited until your maid of honor speech, and then you really could have let her know exactly how you feel. So no, you're not the jerk. You did this in the best way possible, and if she didn't want to ruin her wedding, then she should have had a different maid of honor, to be honest. It's her own fault for thinking this would be okay, and she has nobody to blame except for herself. My idiotic job gave the same punishment for someone being 5 minutes late as they would for someone being 3 hours late. So I decided to maliciously comply and work the system so that I would show up basically to work whenever I want. And there wasn't a single thing that my job could do about it. Here's what happened. So I'm working for a low-level corporation of about 450 employees. I've been there for 5 years, and I have been rising to the top of my department's productivity levels. I mention this as it does pertain to the story. Management had a policy that latecomers would be penalized, but that lateness would be excused under some circumstances. I was good at my job, and I actually loved doing it, so I was more or less a dream employee. I would always show up to work 20 to 30 minutes early because I like to sit in the lunchroom and prepare for my day. Management knew I was almost always early, so if I was late from time to time, and such instances were honestly really rare, they would let it slide, as there was always a valid reason. Now, for some other employees, this latitude was not applied. Chronically late employees would get written up and not have their constant lateness excused. They would complain, of course, but management was firm. They ran an actual meritocracy, where more productive employees would experience preferential treatment. Well, then the business got sold, and we got new management, an international corporation only interested in buying us up, stripping us down, and selling off the company. Now, of course, they denied this constantly, but the fact that over the next 2 years, they stripped us down and sold off the company proved that they were lying. New management comes in and has to make a bunch of idiotic changes. One of those changes is that no reasons for being late are going to be accepted, regardless of validity. Anyone who is 5 minutes or more late for work would be written up. So at the team meeting where this is explained, I asked, so if someone is 5 minutes late and someone else is 3 hours late, the punishment is the same? And they responded by saying yes. So from that day on, I stopped coming in early. I still went to work at my usual time, but I sat in a local coffee shop instead of my work's lunchroom. This meant my work missed out because in the past, I would often help by answering questions, even start work early if needed. And this is because I loved my job, and the old management were wonderful bosses. But I was not doing that anymore under the new management. In fact, if something happened, like having unexpectedly bad traffic, and I was going to end up being a few minutes late, I would just say, forget it. If being late 3 hours is the same punishment as being 5 minutes late, I would just decide to come in later. I would call work to tell them that I was delayed, and then go out and have a leisurely meal in a restaurant, or run some personal errands, or go shopping, or even see a movie. Depending on my mood and how awful the new management had been lately, what would have been, say, a 7-minute lateness on my part would end up seeing me roll in 3 hours late. Sure, it cost me a few bucks, but I made almost as much in bonuses than I did in hourly salary. So missing out on a few hours here or there didn't really bother me too much. I'd come in 3 or 4 hours late, and my new bosses would be fuming, but there was nothing they could do except write me up for the basic tardy, which was the same penalty if I was even 5 minutes late. And to this day, this is still the funniest thing I've ever heard of in my life. Yeah, that's a really stupid system on management's part. Like, seriously, in my opinion, especially if you have the proper management in place, it really can be just like a case-by-case situation. It doesn't have to be this super strict thing where you're like, okay, if you're even 5 minutes late, you're getting punished. punished. But I honestly love the workaround, and I love the loophole that the original poster found. They said, oh, 5 minutes and 3 hours is the same punishment? Cool, I'm gonna go see a movie. Or I'm gonna go to a restaurant and be like, peace, I'm out. And honestly, I would have done the exact same thing. If I knew I was gonna be late, like absolutely knew for a fact there's no way I'm gonna make it on time, then I absolutely would have done the same thing. I would have gone to get breakfast at a fast food joint. I would have sat and enjoyed myself. I mean, if there's no real punishment for being late other than being written up or something like that, and it's only counted as being like a basic tardy write-up, then why on earth would anyone want to try and be on time? Like, go ahead, write me up. I'll just be 3 hours late. That honestly is hilarious to me, and it's proof that management really did not know what they were doing. Because how could they not see that this was going to be the case? How did they not know that someone was going to look at that system and be like, okay, I'm not going to do my job properly. I'm going to show up whenever I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. So honestly, with all things considered, good for the original poster for finding this loophole. This company does not sound the brightest. And honestly, with the way they were approaching being the management of this new company, they honestly kind of deserve to have something shoved back in their face. An entitled coworker is treating my friend like garbage, constantly ostracizing her and making her life a living nightmare. So I decide to get some revenge and expose her for sleeping around with management at her company. And as a result, her future wedding falls apart and she loses tens of thousands of dollars in the process. Here's what happened. Years ago, one of my best friends by the name of Kate is not her real name, was working for a business-to-business tech corporation on the West Coast. Kate had a coworker in the same department as her named Angela. Angela is also not her real name. Now, there are too many things for me to list that Angela did wrong, but here's just a few notable examples. For starters, Angela would show up without fail about 15 minutes late every shift. She had also been passed around between 3 departments due to not being a good fit in the other ones. She would spend her entire shift on social media on her phone and would regularly give people incorrect information on the phone. She was even seen painting her toenails at one point at work. One of Angela's duties was to reply to an email inbox from contractors looking to renew warranties on their products. One time, the inbox was full of 670 unread emails, and all of those were potential paying customers. She would also flirt with every single man who worked for the company, despite the fact that she had a boyfriend. Now, she was not very attractive, and many of these men would just straight up complain to HR. This also led to her making out with employees in the parking lot, and there has been multiple occasions of that. She would skip out on doing her work all week, causing her to need to stay behind and do some more work just so she could collect overtime. But then she would just continue to skip out on doing her work. Kate finally ratted her out on some of the sketchy things she was doing at work, if you know what I mean, which led to a very meeting between Angela and the HR director, with her supervisor by the name of Kim and the department VP. Now, Angela was not fired, but she was pressured to resign, but she declined to do so. It should be noted that this company is notorious among its employees for not firing people that they absolutely should. Their direct supervisor, Kim, was on to Angela's game though, and would watch her more closely over the months. But Angela vowed to have revenge and spent several weeks trying to figure out who it was. Angela was a large, tall woman who was physically intimidating and somehow intimidated one of their coworkers into revealing that Kate was the snitch. So that's when Angela decided to spend the next week making Kate's life a living nightmare. She was verbally bothering her and being overall nasty whenever she saw Kate, gossiping behind her back, etc. It reached a breaking point when Angela shoved Kate while passing her in the hallway one day. HR was notified, and once again, Angela somehow made it off scot-free. Now, knowing that Angela was somehow invincible to HR, many of Kate's coworkers began ostracizing Kate, fearing that Angela would target them as well. Nobody would corroborate Kate's reports of Angela starting rumors or even bothering her. Kate quickly went from loving her job to absolutely hating it, while also becoming very depressed during this time. And it was right about then that I vowed to get some revenge. Angela had won pretty handily, knowing that Kim had no teeth because HR wouldn't touch her. So Angela went back to not doing any of her work. She even got engaged and bragged to everyone at the office about how extravagant her destination wedding plans were. Kate's only positive working relationship at this point were with her supervisor Kim and a few of her coworkers who would still speak with her when Angela wasn't around. About a month later, Kate unexpectedly received a text from one of her coworkers that still talked to her. It was a screenshot of a text message conversation with a department VP. The VP had revealed that he had been sleeping with Angela, and this message had made its way around the gossip mill back to Kate. Kate. So Angela's invincibility towards HR suddenly made a lot more sense. I knew I was going to expose her to her fiancé, but I decided to wait on it. Angela would continually update the entire office on what she had done for her wedding plans the previous day, which was then relayed to me through Kate. So I waited until she had to spend as much money as possible, and during this time, I even acquired more evidence of her infidelity. The day of reckoning comes about 2 weeks before the big day, and on Friday after work, I make a throwaway Facebook account to send off all the proof I have of her cheating on her fiancé. He doesn't reply, but I can see that it was seen at 6:00 p.m. The wedding plans were canceled on Facebook that Sunday, and I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in their household that evening. Fast forward to Monday, and Angela rolls in about 15 minutes late and immediately demands to speak to HR. A four-way meeting takes place between Angela, Kim, the HR director, and the department VP. You know, the one that she's been sleeping with. 10 minutes go by, and Kim and the HR director both leave. 5 minutes later, and Angela leaves the office, followed shortly by the department VP, and they both return to their own workspaces. Angela begins working, and 15 minutes later, the department VP arrives with Kim and security. They tell Angela to pack her things and turn in her badge, and Angela is escorted out of the building. Angela protested to the VP, and the entire way out, he only says 2 words: "You're replaceable." Now, it was later found out that Angela had racked up tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt just to pay for her wedding, and now that her engagement was off, she tried to use her affair with the department VP to blackmail her way into a pay raise. She had told them that she had received offers from other companies that would pay her much more, which was a complete lie too, by the way, and that she would leave if they didn't give her a significant raise, which was a complete bluff. When Kim and the HR director left the room, the department VP told Angela that if they got in writing that she would leave without a raise, he could then convince them to give her the raise. He also reassured her that she would take it back during her 2 weeks notice and maintain her position. So Angela took the bait, and the department VP immediately took this formal in-writing notice of resignation to HR and Kim. Rather than having her complete her 2 weeks notice, they decided that it wouldn't be necessary, so she could leave that very day. Now, from cheating on her fiancé to sleeping with her boss's boss, all the way up to overplaying her hand and attempting to get a raise while being the worst employee in the department, as well as signing a resignation letter, all of this was Angela's own doing. And while I get the feeling like her house of cards would have fallen on its own eventually, it honestly feels good being the one to help push it down. Wow, that Angela lady sounds like a piece of work. Like seriously, you have to be really twisted to treat people that way. Not only is she a giant bully at work, but she was literally just sleeping around to try and be invincible in the department she was in. Like, that's not okay. That is so corrupt. I mean, what an awful and corrupt HR system, as well as leadership in this company. Like, that is seriously not okay. So good for the original poster for not only standing up for their friend, but also dismantling this corrupt lady's life. She absolutely had it coming with the way she was treating people around her. And the original poster is absolutely right. Their house of cards was gonna fall sooner or later. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to switch seats with a child on an 8-hour flight, even though I booked this seat specifically, and this was my second 8-hour flight just to make my way home? Here's what happened. So for starters and a bit of context, this was my second 8-hour flight on my way home from Africa via Dubai. I had booked an aisle seat so I could get up without bothering others, and a special meal due to health requirements. I boarded the plane, found my seat, and settled in. A family gets on with 3 kids. They don't speak much English, but they ask me if I could switch seats with one of their kids so they can all be together. The father of the family wasn't sat anywhere near the mother and the kids, so it looked to me like they left their seats to random assignment. I initially said yes, thinking it was just to move across the aisle, but then realized they wanted me to switch to sit in a middle seat, and that's when I said straight up, absolutely not. Another passenger then gets up and says he has a seat in the back that I can move to. Now, I have no idea how he has something like that, but I still said no. I said that I had booked my seat and I ordered a dietary meal, and there's no way I was moving to a middle seat. He then starts loudly criticizing me and saying he hopes I understand that I'm splitting a family up. This eventually attracts attention from the crew because it's literally holding up boarding. They got a passenger on the other end of the road to switch and sit somewhere else so their kids could sit together. The other passenger from before then starts loudly saying to his kids and the family, "Do you understand what happened? She thought her seat was too special, so she wouldn't let you sit together." I told the guy to mind his own business, and he responded that he wasn't talking to me. I was exhausted and sleep deprived by this point, and I told him to just stop talking about me and just can it. I didn't think I was in the wrong here. I organized myself beforehand and I booked my seat, and I felt it was quite unfair to have some random guy criticizing me to literally half the cabin for not wanting to swap to a middle seat for an 8-hour flight. So honestly, I need to know, am I the jerk for refusing to switch seats with a kid on an 8-hour flight? No, you are not the jerk. You planned ahead, you wanted an aisle seat, and you have a very specific meal you have to eat. That is not you being selfish, that's you being responsible. The selfish thing is that this family didn't want to have assigned seats, but instead left it to chance. It could have been anybody sitting next to them, and they still would have tried to guilt trip them in the same way they tried to guilt trip you. And that's not fair for anybody. That seriously is so messed up. So if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. I would have sat there, folded my arms, and said, "Nope, you better find your seat because you're not taking mine for a second." Mind you, this is also your second 8-hour flight just to try and go home. There's no reason for you to give up something that you properly planned for. That's not you being selfish or heartless, and this father's lack of preparation is quite literally not your problem. Am I the jerk for telling an American guy that he should stop calling himself German if he's never lived there and can barely speak the language? Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm German, and I was traveling last weekend through Spain. I stayed at a hostel at a mixed room, and some of my roommates were American. At night, we were all mingling and talking about each other, and one of the American guys, upon hearing that I was German, told me, "Oh wow, a fellow German." At this point, I wasn't actually sure if he was an American, so I asked in German if he was German. He mumbled a bit and said, "I'm sorry, I'm German, but I actually don't speak the language, only a few sentences." But he kept bringing up about how being German shaped his life, how important German culture was, and how he apparently celebrates Oktoberfest every single year. I asked him why he would say he was German if he was actually American, and he said that it was because his great-grandfather was German and his grandmother was German-Irish. So I thought to myself, okay, whatever that means. I asked him if he knew where his great-grandfather was from, and surprisingly, he did. He was from Hamburg, Germany. But this was extra hilarious because then it makes no sense for the guy to celebrate Oktoberfest, as that's a Bavarian thing to do. I still didn't say anything, and we just kept talking. The guy kept making all these weird remarks about German culture and German food, like hot dogs and sauerkraut. Me and my friends were then planning to go look for a place to drink, and he asked to come along with us, just so the Germans could stick together. We had a few beers at the bar, and he once again brought up something about being German, and saying he was going to get the German flag tattooed in Germany. And by this point, I was already a bit tipsy, while also getting pretty annoyed. And I told him straight up, "Can you please stop saying that? You're not German, my friend. You're an American of German descent. You don't even know what German culture or food is like. You can't even speak the language. You're honestly just really annoying me." The guy looked pretty angry and annoyed, and kind of scoffed and tried to jokingly say, "You're right, I'd rather be an American. At least then I can say I didn't lose a world war." At that point, me and my friends were rolling our eyes so hard that we just moved to a different place. Later, some other guy not related to us told me that the guy was pretty annoyed and sad that I told him he wasn't German, because apparently that was a big part of his identity. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk in this situation. As a fellow American, this guy was being obnoxious, and you are 100% right. You can't call yourself a member of a different society if you not only don't speak their language, but also never live there and you don't know their culture. Just because you have ancestors who came from that area doesn't mean you can claim citizenship or any other kind of connection to that besides blood relatives. And it really sucks that this was such a huge part of his identity. And sure, he can be proud of his heritage and all that other stuff. He can have some kind of connection to it and really enjoy the culture and all that stuff, but he really can't go around and be like, "Yeah, I'm a German, this is like who I am," because brother, you are from America. You are the least German person walking around right now. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I don't think you did anything wrong, and you had every right to put this guy in his place. My entitled company tries to take away my time off by trying to pull a fast one on me and basically trick me out of it. So I decided to maliciously comply, putting them in a nasty spot and nearly quitting in the process. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, background, I work as the sole IT guy in a firm of about 75 people that is part of a larger nationwide mother firm. Our local firm has an ongoing agreement with another local firm that we play backup for each other in case we need to help one another with backup or knowledge sharing or whatever. This has been the case since 2009, and I've worked for this firm since 2002, so I'm kind of an old hand at the game. We have this generous leave package that builds the longer we work here. The starter was 180 hours per year leave, and someone with 20 plus years has 240 hours, and that's the one that I have. Now, because we have this much leave, I'm of the mind to not be all that strict with the when and the how. I'm single and have no kids, so I'm happy to let others with the kids take priority to handle school holidays. As such, the last 15-something years, I have always taken the bulk of my leave in September and October, and the rest in Fridays all the way coming up to the new year. The only rules we have regarding when and how we take leave is that it can't be any more than 6 weeks together. You can't transfer more than 7 days to the next year, and your time off must be approved, which it always is. As per usual, I put in my time off request for September and October somewhere in May of that year, and as I was expecting, this gets approved. Around August, we get news from our hardware vendor that they will be installing our new server cluster in the end of September. Now, that's not really a cool thing to do, but hey, what are you gonna do? I talk it over with the big boss and agree to move my leave to February and March of the next year. And honestly, I don't mind that much. He is happy, I'm happy, and we just go ahead with the plan. Now, since I'm a one-man department, and corporations are gonna be corporations, I have a department head that oversees my department, along with a few others. Somewhere in the end of September, she walks into my office and asks me when I'm planning to take the bulk of my leave. I tell him about the server cluster install and that my leave has been moved to February and March. Now, you might be asking, if you're gonna be the department head or part of management, you have to at least be reasonable, right? Well, you're definitely wrong in this case. He tells me that since I won't be taking my leave in this year, it will then be automatically forfeit. I then tell him I have an agreement with the big boss, to which he states that he talked about it with the big boss and that the arrangement won't work since he didn't approve it. So then I get on the phone and I call the boss, and he states that yes, indeed, my leave will not be approved and it can't be moved to next year. And at this point, I was angry. Like, I was so furious, I was fuming. So I took a half day and went home and mulled things over. Now, with age comes wisdom, and I know not to take decisions when I am angry. The next day, I go in and ask a leave statement from our HR department that has a counter of all of our leave and, more importantly, all of our overtime. I had around 700 hours of overtime standing, and that was accrued over the years, and 220 hours of leave. So I put in 5 weeks leave and then 1 week of overtime, and I repeated this over and over again, all the way until I landed on the first week of January. Then I put in the remaining overtime and landed in the end of February. And next to that, I sent in my resignation as well as my 3 months notice, which I planned exactly on the last day of my leave. Not even a half an hour later, my big boss and the department head are at my desk asking me what's happening. So I told them that since the department head had told me that I couldn't transfer the leave, I would then just be taking it this year. And since the agreement to move my leave was broken, I felt I didn't have another choice but to look for other work where agreements in fact would be honored. I then asked them what rule of the worker's manual regarding leave I had broken, if any, and if I did break a rule, could you please point it out? But they literally came up with nothing. Now, after that talk, I went home and the waiting game began. The big boss called me the next morning on my work cell phone asking me to come in. I said to him, sorry, nope, I'm on leave, but I'm happy to make a pot of coffee if you want to drop by. So he does just that and drops by my place. Things eventually get brought up, and it seems like his department head wasn't entirely upfront with him, even though he wasn't entirely innocent either, and he wants to make things right. My 6 months leave stayed in place, and he offered to match the offers I would get from other firms just to keep me on board within reason. So fast forward, and while I do still work at the same firm, I have since received a 15% increase in my wage. I don't do overtime anymore, and my laptop doesn't come home with me either, and my work phone has to stay at work as well. I still do my job to the best of my abilities, but at the end of the day, if my hours are done, I go home. And even if the building was on fire, my clock out time would mean that I'm out the door. And now, as a result, my leave gets planned around my preferences as well, so I no longer have to shift around to meet other people's needs. Wow, talk about playing the biggest Uno reverse card. This guy had so much overtime and paid time off stored stored up over the years. He literally was about to take 6 months off of work just to spite these people for not letting him take his time off. Like, seriously, these people are messed up. They didn't recognize his absolute seniority in this company, and they really should have been more respectful. And honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. So good for you for taking the initiative. These people were being weird, and in my opinion, they had no right to try and ruin your time off in the way that they tried to do. My boyfriend says that he will leave me if I go back to therapy, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So the title says it all. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 months. In different places, he's shown immaturity, but I've mostly looked past it and kept telling myself that nobody's perfect. But yesterday, I walk into my bedroom and he puts his phone to his face and says, "She's coming, I gotta call you back." Now clearly he wasn't on the phone and he was playing a joke about talking to another woman, but in my opinion, it was extremely immature. And I told him that this could be considered emotionally neglectful. He goes on that he's a jokester and that in every other relationship, he's played jokes and it was normal. I tell him that a million other women would be okay with the jokes, but that doesn't mean that I have to be. He tells me fine, he'll be serious from now on and not make any more jokes. I respond by telling him I'm going back to therapy. His response to that was to say that the day you go back to therapy, let me know because our relationship will be over. I asked him what's the problem with therapy and if he's worried the therapist will help me realize how unhealthy things are about my relationship. He says that people who go to therapy come out worse and that a stranger shouldn't be giving their opinion on your life or telling you what to do. Now, I know that given the context, me saying that I'm going to therapy might sound like some kind of ultimatum or some kind of threat even, but honestly, I feel like I'm struggling with compromising or even just ignoring red flags, and the lines have become so blurred, I need someone to help me sort things out. Should such an ultimatum be a deal breaker? What should I do? Your boyfriend is awful. First and foremost, there is nothing wrong with going to therapy. That is a normal way to treat your mental health, and that does not make you a bad person. What he's afraid of is that, yeah, you're going to realize how awful of a boyfriend he actually is, and your eyes are going to be opened up by your therapist that your boyfriend might not be the best person for you. So it really sounds like he doesn't want you to figure that out. By the way, this guy is 34 years old, and he's acting like he's talking to another woman on the phone. He's doing that just to get under your skin, and that is so inappropriate. If he was a good partner, he would be very involved in this process, and he would be supportive of you going to therapy. So good for you for making that step, and I honestly feel like you can do a lot better than the boyfriend you currently have. Am I the jerk for slapping a little child after she tried to unalive my dog as revenge simply because I didn't get her the right doll for Christmas last year? Here's what happened. Also, this story came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. So I'm a 21-year-old female and I'm engaged to my fiance who's 25 years old. We live within a 70-mile radius of almost my entire family. I have a 2-year-old Australian Shepherd named Heather who is the light of my life and has essentially saved my life multiple times. She is 50% blind, but this has never been a problem. Last month, a family reunion was hosted at my house, which my almost sister-in-law attended along with her husband and 2 children. Her younger child, we'll call her Stacy, that's not her real name, is 9 years old and extremely intelligent. Stacy is an A+ student and never does anything stupid or without reason. At the beginning of the event, Heather will leave my side and walk around sniffing everything before settling back down close to me after about 10 to 30 minutes. Almost an hour had passed since I had welcomed all my guests to this family reunion, and Heather was still absent. I wouldn't usually worry, but since there were many children present, I decided to look around. I was completely appalled by what I found. I was wandering into the basement and was about to leave when I heard a faint whimper. After a moment of tracking the sound, I opened an airtight plastic box to find Heather inside looking strangely tired, meaning that she had been in there for a while. I take Heather out and look around only to discover Stacy hiding under a table. I drag her out and I ask if she did this. She responds by giggling and saying, "Yes, I did." I hold back my tears and my anger. My best friend could have passed away. I asked if she knew the box was an airtight box, and she said, and I quote, "Duh, it wouldn't have been fun if it wasn't one." She starts to laugh, and now I realize she wanted to unalive my dog. So I slap her straight across the face, not very strongly of course, and she runs upstairs crying. And now half the family has blocked me on everything and refuses to realize that Stacy is messed up. It has since been revealed that Stacy had the full intention of taking my dog out, all because of last Christmas when I didn't give her the doll that she wanted. Yet most most of my family still sides with her, as well as my almost sister-in-law's direct family. My fiance does, however, completely agree with me, as he understands Stacy's twisted intention and he absolutely loves Heather. So am I the jerk for slapping a 9-year-old for trying to take out my beloved dog? What should I do? Wow, that little monster is absolutely insane. That is so unacceptable, it's not even funny. This little brat tried to take out your dog all because you didn't get her the right doll for Christmas. Like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously, that is such a high escalation, that's not even funny. And I'm pretty sure that's like a sign of a possible psychopath or something like that. This little girl seriously wanted to hurt that dog. She put the dog in an airtight, like, plastic box, I'm assuming, and just left it there giggling like, oh yeah, this is what I want. It's not gonna be fun if she can't breathe. Like, what is happening right now? Mommy and daddy are clearly raising a psychopath, and this little girl seriously needs some help. It seems like everybody in this story is focusing on the fact that the original poster slapped the kid, but are still completely ignoring the fact that this little psychopath tried to take out this dog. If the original poster had not gone downstairs and gotten the dog out of that plastic bin, the dog probably would have passed away. That would have been horrific. Literally, how is everybody excusing that behavior and still deciding to take the side of this little brat? Like, what is their rationale? Oh, don't slap my child. She was only trying to take out your dog. I know if that was my kid, I absolutely would ground them for the next 3 years and probably take them to a doctor to get them analyzed. Like, seriously, that is not okay. I mean, hopefully the soon-to-be sister-in-law doesn't have any other pets in their family, because chances are that little brat's gonna try and take one of them out if you do anything wrong to her. So you know what? You are absolutely not the jerk. I don't think what you did was that bad, considered how that kid treated your dog. And hopefully in the future you set up some serious boundaries with the family and blatantly tell them, hey, if you want to come over, don't bring over your psychopath kid because she might try to take my dog out. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for chastising my wife for accidentally breaking my MacBook by sitting on it? Here's what happened. So my wife has a habit of plopping her butt down without ever taking a look of where she's sitting. I've asked her repeatedly to look before she sits because some of the things she sat in included puke, an ant pile, a puddle of water that accumulated on the surface of the floor, a spider, and that one was while we were hiking, and so much more. I've mostly learned to mitigate any direct effect this has on me by ensuring breakable things are not anywhere that people would potentially sit. I used to have a habit of setting all kinds of things on the couch next to me for immediate use, and I now have to put it all in a different place. I did this because she would constantly come up without looking while I'm playing a game or watching a show or something and just sit down, and then suddenly the TV is turned off or the volume is messed up, or in the previous worst case scenario, she sat on one of the joysticks on my PS5 controller and she sat on it while I had the controller sitting next to me so I could watch a cutscene of a game. Lately, she's been borrowing my MacBook a lot, and I always put it back in my office when I'm not using it, just so I can keep it charged. It is a $3,000 MacBook from 2022, and it's one of the M1 models. She left it on the couch and went back, accidentally sitting on it and cracking the screen. I was extremely furious, as not only is there now a financial burden here, but I'm also out of computer, and I really need that for some classes I'm taking. When I said to her, oh come on, why can't you ever look where you're sitting, ever? Was sitting in vomit not enough motivation, or an anthill, or a spider? When I said this, she got very defensive. I continued by saying that her lack of attention just cost us hundreds of dollars, and it put me in a bad place for my school program. She called me a jerk for talking down to her because I have asked her many times to look where she sits, and I've snapped before because she will just sit without looking and cause issues. For instance, she sat on an ottoman without looking and spilled a bunch of food over that I had sitting there next to me. This time though, it really pushed me over the edge. So am I the jerk here? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk here. For some context, both of these people are straight up adults. They have enough common sense to know where they're sitting, and it's not like you haven't brought this up to her before as some kind of potential issue. And now the worst case scenario has happened. She sat down on your MacBook, even though you've tried very hard to be as careful as possible with protecting your valuables, simply because she'll sit on them and ruin them. Like, if this doesn't sink in that yeah, she needs to look where she's sitting, then I honestly don't know what will. Thankfully, you can get the screen fixed, but still, that's such a pain in the neck. I would be frustrated too. I think I would get upset as well if after so many times I've said, listen, you need to look where you sit. You're causing all these problems. It's not personal. well, but you're literally breaking stuff. This is no longer just a cute thing happening. This is like hindering my life. Like if I was in your shoes, that's exactly what I would be saying. And you know what? I don't think you're really overreacting here when you're getting frustrated that a $3,000 laptop screen is now busted. I think I would lose my mind. I don't know about you, but I don't have that kind of money laying around, even just hundreds of dollars at the drop of a hat, just to spend on trying to get a MacBook fixed right away for classes. Like maybe at the beginning of the month when I get paid, but even then, like, come on, this is not okay. And it's really inconvenient for you. So I don't think you're the jerk. I think making up and maybe apologizing for snapping might be a good plan here just to try and meet halfway, but still, I think the point stands. She needs to be careful where she sits down because she just broke something really expensive, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. This story also came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not babysitting right before going on a trip? Here's what happened. So first, I want to start off by saying that for various reasons, I've decided to start cutting off a few family members in my life, and my grandma is one of the people I started to cut ties with. Now, I went on a camping trip for a week, and I made it clear the week prior that I'd be busy packing. While I was packing, just a day before I would be leaving, I got a call from my grandmother asking me to babysit my brother. Now, normally I did this for her to make money, but lately, I've only been doing it if my dad asked me to, because he normally pays me on time and in full to do it, and he's one of the few people I haven't gone low contact with. And plus, I know he needs the help, but that day I couldn't, because I was literally leaving the next day. So when my grandmother called me asking me to babysit, not giving me any reason why at first, I told her no. She then proceeded to let me know that she had to take her mother, who is my great-grandmother, to a doctor's appointment, and asked once again if I could watch him. I once again turned her down because for one, I was busy packing, and secondly, she never pays me on time when I do it, if at all. Also, I knew full well that she has multiple babysitters to ask instead of me, so I knew she wouldn't be without a sitter without me. I was later told that this appointment was for a medical issue that my great-grandmother was dealing with, which kind of got me thinking if I was the jerk or not, since I possibly made them late to an appointment to help my great-grandmother out. I honestly don't know if I'm the jerk or not, since I was busy and I'm not on the best terms with my grandma. But at the same time, I don't know if I was being selfish for not helping out when she asked to. What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all in this situation. It sounded like you had other commitments and you couldn't drop what you were doing right then and there just to help out your grandma with babysitting your brother. Forget all the money and all the other stuff that she's supposed to pay you, or the fact that she has other sitters. When it comes to responsibilities and other commitments, especially as an adult, you can just straight up say no, I can't help you out, and that's the end of it. It doesn't mean you're selfish just because you can't help somebody out. It just means that you're busy and you have other things that take priority over whatever they're requesting of you right now. And it sounds like she had other sitters available. She really could have called other people and said, hey, can you help out instead? So I really wouldn't beat yourself up over this. You are not the jerk in this situation. They probably made their appointment even if they were late, and it's no big deal, because at the end of the day, you had prior commitments. And if they can't understand that, then honestly, that is their problem entirely. Am I the jerk for not opening the bathroom door for my brother's girlfriend, all while I was taking the shower? Here's what happened. So I live with my parents, as well as my brother and his girlfriend. We will call his girlfriend Paige. Paige is not her real name. Paige moved in with us about a year ago, since her parents wanted her to pay rent. Now, we have two bathrooms, one with a shower and one without. Since moving in, Paige has made it very clear that she doesn't like the smaller bathroom. She would rather wait until the person is done in the larger one, as opposed to just using the smaller one, which is like, whatever, I guess. I don't really have a preference, so I use the small one just to avoid drama. Anyways, a couple of days ago, I had just come home from a long run, and I was gross and incredibly sweaty. As soon as I got into the house, I went into the large bathroom to go take a shower. Everything was fine until I hear a banging on the door. Mind you, I'm in the middle of a shower. I have no clothes on and I'm covered in soap. I ask the person banging what they want, and Paige answers by saying, "Let me in, I have to go pee." At this point, I'm shocked, and I ask her, is the other bathroom being used? But she just sighs and says to me, "Just let me in." I tell her no, and that she can either use the other bathroom or wait until I'm done. She then starts banging on the door and cursing me out, and this goes on for about 5 minutes. But I just tune her out and I continue my shower. When I was done, I just assumed she relented and used the other one, but instead, I was met with a warm, wet surprise when I stepped into the hallway. That's right, Paige had gone to the bathroom on the floor and didn't even clean it up. I am now angry. Not only did she completely bother me while I was in the shower, but now she left a disgusting mess that could have been avoided if she just used the other bathroom. I stormed to her and my brother's room, and we got into an argument. And the basic outline of it was that this wouldn't have happened if I had just opened the door. And this was my brother as well as Paige actually saying this. So I said, listen, you were invading my privacy and you left a big, gross mess. Paige ended up telling my parents everything except for going to the bathroom on the floor. They were apparently on my side to begin with, but when I told them that final detail, they were livid. They almost kicked her out right then and there, but after they calmed down a little bit, they told her that she would have to find somewhere else to shower because she was no longer allowed to use the big bathroom. Now my brother's not talking to me, and his girlfriend is telling everybody that I was a manipulative jerk who almost made her homeless. I don't think I was the jerk here, but maybe she was right. What should I do? You are not the jerk, and she is absolutely not right. I am so glad your parents saw exactly where you were coming from. She went to the bathroom on the floor, like straight up just on the carpet basically. And that's because you wouldn't let her into the bathroom while you were showering. That is straight up weird. Paige does not sound like a good person, and it kind of makes me believe that maybe she moved out for other reasons besides rent. Maybe her parents were tired of her pulling stuff like this on a daily basis. And while I'm glad that your parents are on your side, I am so disturbed that they did not kick her out right then and there. Like seriously, that is unacceptable. In no universe is it ever okay for somebody to do that in anyone's home. You go to the bathroom in the toilet. You don't go to the bathroom on the floor in protest, just as some kind of like weird revenge, just to get back at someone for not letting you in the bathroom. Like that is crazy to me. And if I was in the parents' shoes, I would have kicked her out and said, nope, you gotta go. So no, you're not the jerk, your brother's an idiot, and if anything, he's probably horrified and embarrassed for the way his girlfriend acted. And if your girlfriend really wants to spread false rumors about you, just tell everybody the truth of what she did. And that instead of going to another bathroom to take care of her business, she decided to squat down and go to the bathroom on the floor like a dog, and then just sit back and watch people's reactions. Because I'm willing to bet they're gonna take your side pretty quickly. Am I the jerk for choosing to leave my son's wedding early, despite the fact that I told him ahead of time that I would be doing that? Here's what happened. My son Alan has just recently gotten married to his wife. I love them both very much. It's also relevant to mention that I really dislike parties and large gatherings. I'm not sociable at all, and I really dislike all of them. So I was kind of a downer when I heard that my son and his wife were getting married and that they were going to have a wedding with around 150 people. I told my son ahead of time that I would probably leave early and that me and the rest of our family would take 2 cars so that they could stay if they wanted to. And he looked like he didn't much mind it at the time. So at the wedding itself, after the ceremony, I basically told him that I was glad and it looked great, but I was going to go home. He asked if I was going to at least stay for the cake or for the food, but the food didn't really look all that appetizing to me. So I told him I was just gonna leave. He said, all right, whatever, just go. And I went back to my table and I got my stuff. I told my wife and she said she didn't feel comfortable driving back alone as the venue was very far from us and the roads there were not great. I said in that case, she could come with me, and after some hemming and hawing, she agreed. So both of us left and we were on our way. Then 2 days later, my son's new wife bombarded me and my wife with messages that she was disgusted with us, saying horrible things about us and insulting us as people and as parents. It was really just sickening. I told her off and asked her why she thought it was okay to talk to her in-laws like that, and she said that us leaving ruined the wedding for her son and that he was upset for the rest of the night. She continued to berate us, but I politely told her to leave us alone, and then I called my son, mainly to inform him that his wife had a temper and he should know about it ahead of time. When we talked about it, he basically started berating me too and said things like, you always do this, as well as just leave me alone, all before hanging up on me. I feel like I'm justified since I told him ahead of time that I wasn't gonna stay. But am I the jerk here? What should I do? Wow, you are definitely the jerk here. You left your son's wedding early. You didn't even feel the need to stick around and try and show some kind of support. You thought about your own comfort and what you wanted and decided, you know what, I'm gonna go home and just spend time at my house. Like seriously, how selfish can you possibly get? This is the one day where your son really needed you there, and instead, you decided to think about yourself and your own needs at once. You very easily could have sat in the corner and been on your phone. You could have at least had a presence there at that wedding, but you decided, okay, ceremony's over, gotta get home and make my own food. Like seriously, you sound like an awful parent. And you know what? Your son probably did see this coming, because from the sounds of it, it kind of seems like you've done this to your son throughout his entire life. Like, can't you see that this is seriously a problem? I mean, you didn't even stay for the meal that they paid paid for. Like, that is such a disgusting lack of love and respect for you as a parent. It's not even funny. And you also basically forced your wife to leave as well, even though your wife probably didn't want to leave. And now when you get confronted by his wife, who doesn't have a temper by the way, as she was literally just defending her husband, you have the audacity to try and flip the script and be like, wow, I'm the victim here. You're not the victim here. You're the assailant. What you did was very selfish, and you absolutely need to apologize. So in my opinion, yes, you are the jerk. That was so inappropriate, and you have burned a serious bridge in your son's life. My daughter stood up to her bully and put her in her place after this brat tried to mock my daughter and my son for being adopted. And now I'm not sure if my daughter's the jerk or if she might have taken things a little too far. Here's what happened. So, according to my daughter, this happened last week, but I just heard about it now. For context, I have 11-year-old twins, a boy who we will call Leo and a girl who we will call Libra. Both of their names are fake. They are adopted as I am single, and they look absolutely nothing like me. They are both blonde with gray eyes, and I have dark hair with brown eyes. Now, they know they are adopted, but they don't care. However, they are in middle school, and this is the age of the most discrimination, at least according to my own experience. Now, here is where the trouble starts. Libra looks like a very quiet kid, but she will fight to the end to defend her brother, who is shy and non-confrontational. They have a classmate who we will call Julia, and Julia is one of those classic wannabe popular middle school girls. You know the type. She thinks that she is the most important person in the world, and the one thing that she can't stand is being told that she's not. Unfortunately, they are on the same bus, and this is where our story takes place. Libra and Leo are sitting next to each other in the seat, and Julia is 2 rows behind them, nose in her phone. Suddenly, one of Julia's friends whispers something in her ear and then points to Leo. So Julia walks up to him and says, "Why are you sitting next to that dweeb? She wears nerd glasses and is ugly." And she's talking about Libra. Leo says hesitantly, cause she's my sister. Julia then literally replies the meanest comment I've ever heard. I swear my blood was boiling when Libra told me what she said. This little brat said, "No, she is not your sister. You are adopted. That means you don't have a family." This then brought about a shocked silence. "Your mom does not look the same as you, so you can't be related. You will never be as awesome as me because you don't have a real family." Libra responds to this with the most awesome insult I've ever heard in a while. "You know what, Julia? You remind me of a dandelion in a field of dandelions. You know why? Because a flower on its own is nice, but when it's put in a group of its own kind, it will stand out more than a single drop of water in the ocean. You say you are beautiful and amazing because you straighten your hair, you slather on makeup, and your pants are too short for you. That may be friends when you are friends with dweebs like me, but in a sea of made up and fake girls just like yourself, you are insignificant, barely noticeable. You pretend others are beneath your gaze while you yourself are immemorable. To me and my brother, you matter no more than a speck of dust." After that, there was a lot more silence, and this is where I think Libra might have taken it too far. She actually spit at Julia. Yep, a big glob of spit right on her shiny new Converse. Julia just started sobbing like crazy. She went back to her seat, where even her friends scooted away from her. After Libra told me this, I was simultaneously laughing and worried, because I really didn't think that she would go as far as spitting on Julia's shoes. She also told me that she used dandelions as an example because they are toxic on the inside. But that begs the question, is my daughter a jerk for the way she talked to this bully? No, your daughter's not the jerk. She seriously said exactly what needed to be said. People like this who act like they're better than other people and put down others just because they're adopted, like, first off, who cares? And secondly, that's just such a dumb insult in and of itself. These kids know they're adopted and they love their parents regardless. And the fact that this Julia kid would suddenly be like, "Yeah, you're adopted, you don't have a family," that is such a toxic thing to do, and I would not blame your daughter for doing that in the slightest. So no, she's not the jerk. She might get in trouble at school, but honestly, who cares? That little brat crossed the line, and she has no business talking to anybody in that way. A military soldier sucker punches me in the face after I get into a minor fender bender with his car, and after he drives off and nearly runs me over with his car, I decide to pursue criminal charges, forcing him to be kicked out of the United States military while also requiring him to pay me tens of thousands of dollars. Here's what happened. So I was working as a civilian for the United States military overseas, and I lived off base in an apartment complex popular among the US military. And one fateful morning, I accidentally hit another soldier's vehicle. Upon exiting the vehicle, I noticed that both of our vehicles were what you would call a hoop tie. A hoop tie is an old car that is pretty beat up that has been passed around from service to service member, and they generally sell for about $2,000. $80,000. I also recognized that I was at fault for the accident, and honestly, it was a very minor accident. His rear bumper was dented in slightly, and I could hear that both of our cars were still running. I approached the driver who had already gotten out, and he was in uniform, and I apologized and said if it was all right with him, I'd like to negotiate a payment that I will pay him in cash, and we don't have to involve any of the authorities. I wanted to keep this as simple as possible. I'll be honest, the accident was so minor, I honestly expected him to say, nah, it's all good. But even if he wanted some money, I'd be willing to pay him. I have always been of the opinion, if you have a fender bender and can negotiate agreeable terms between both the parties, it's best not to involve insurance or the police. But this guy told me he wanted to call the police. I said we could call the police, or we could go on base together and I could give him $300 for any of the damages. But he said that wasn't enough, so I upped the offer to $500. And then he did something so unbelievable that I honestly didn't expect it. He proceeded to punch me in the face. It was a complete sucker punch, and I was so caught off guard. He then got into his car and took off, and in the process nearly ran me over. Now, I had a black box in my car which recorded everything. I went to the marshal office on the base, which is basically the police station, and I reported the accident and the assault and showed the military police the footage. And then they used the license plate to track him down. At this point, I was also asked if I wanted to involve the local authorities and press criminal charges off base. Honestly, I felt like the soldier would learn his lesson if I let the UMCJ, which is basically the military court, completely handle this, and I decided to say not at this time. Now, the end result of the incident was that the soldier got 60 days of extra duty. He got a reduction in rank and forfeited a portion of his paycheck. And well, essentially, if he just dealt with that, this would have been the end of the whole ordeal. And honestly, at this point, I assumed our little ordeal was over, but boy, have I never been more wrong. A few days after his punishment was decided on, which was not long after the incident itself, I was in the grocery store on base shopping when the soldier who attacked me saw me and began to insult me. I told him he needed to calm down and that he should just learn his lesson, but he told me that I was a coward who didn't know how to take a good punch. But I reminded him that I held back on destroying his life, and he just told me that he's already been punished and I can't touch him again. Eventually, he just left me be. Now, a store employee witnessed the entire encounter, and I got the employee's detail and reported this interaction to his command. His commander told me he had been ordered to not interact with me, and now that he has, action would be taken. His commander also recommended that I involve the local authorities since this soldier obviously isn't learning his lesson. So I did just that. I contacted an attorney, and the attorney at first was unsure if we would be successful in suing the soldier, and I just said he would need a cash payment to take the case. Honestly, I was mad, and I wanted to teach this guy a lesson. So eventually, I agreed to pursue this, and honestly, it was not cheap. Now, to keep this story relatively short, we ended up in a court off base. We presented our evidence. The soldier in question had decided to represent himself. Several times in the court, he had outbursts, and eventually, the judge ended up granting me a judgment of approximately $50,000 US. When the judgment was given, the soldier called the judge an awful name, and that the army would cover him for everything. So the judge decided his judgment was going to be $80,000, with the judge then asking me if I also wanted to press charges against this soldier, all in criminal court. I mean, honestly, it was obvious this guy wasn't going to learn a lesson, so I told the judge I wanted to pursue criminal charges in addition to his judgment. My lawyer later advised me that if I ever wanted to see the money, I should pursue an international hold, and with this judgment, it's likely that a judge would grant this to me. Basically, an international hold is where this soldier would not be allowed to leave the country until I was paid my $80,000. Also, he told me that according to the agreement between the US military and the host country, the US military would honor the international hold. So basically, the military would not protect him or move him out of the country to avoid punishment. And honestly, by this point, I had paid my lawyer thousands of dollars, and I honestly didn't feel like paying thousands of dollars and getting nothing for it. So I said yes, I want to move forward with the international hold. About a month later, the hold was granted, and the US military was informed of this. 2 months after the criminal case was over, the soldier was sentenced to 90 days in jail. Now, by this point, the soldier had been moved onto the base into his barracks by his commander. I remember the day I was informed. The military police handed him over to the local authorities to begin his 90-day jail sentence. Now, did I mention he still owed me $80,000? Now, I heard heard nothing for a year, and then one day I got a call from his commander. His commander wants me to make a statement in regards to the case. So I go in and I make the statement. During the statement, I find out the US military was in the process of chaptering the soldier out of the US military. The commander also informed me that he was close to coming up with the money to pay me so he could have the international hold lifted. The commander also asked me if my lawyer would be willing to make a statement. I contacted my lawyer, who has also made a statement about the facts of the case. A few weeks later, his ex-wife contacted me, and when this all started, I knew he was married, so I guess his wife decided to divorce him. She informed me that her ex-husband had the money and needed the details on how to pay me. I provided her the details, and a few days later, I got paid. I then told him that the money came through. She then asked me to send a receipt so he could have the international hold lifted and return to the United States. I asked her how he got the money, and she said he maxed out his credit card and also had family help him out. Also, during the conversation, I had found out the army had chartered him out of the military. I sent her the receipt, and that was the last I ever heard from his side. Now, at this point, I'm still overseas, and that guy is back in the United States. He most likely has a criminal record, which means he wouldn't even be allowed past immigration. Plus, since then, I've taken a new job and I've definitely moved. And honestly, hopefully this guy learned his lesson that you can't just sucker punch someone and try and get away with it. Wow, that guy crossed the line. He literally punched you over a fender bender. I mean, I've heard of road rage before, but that is honestly so extreme. There's no reason to get in a fight over that. This very easily could have been fixed. It didn't need to escalate to this kind of violence. Like seriously, that's not okay. And then he has the audacity to not only break his orders, but also insult you inside of the store. Like, come on, this guy is so childish. He should have just taken his punishment and moved on with his life. Like seriously, he made this a bigger deal than it needed to be. So really, I don't blame you for taking the steps you needed to take. This guy was so far out of line. There was no reason for him to attack you like that, and the fact that he was making this worse for himself is literally his own fault. You tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. You tried to be the nice guy and not pursue criminal charges. But this guy seriously didn't want to learn his lesson, and he has nobody else to blame except for himself. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for firing my brother from my business after he proposed to his girlfriend at my wedding? Here's what happened. So, for a bit of background, I own a plumbing company and hired my brother 3 years ago. He was jobless after the pandemic, and I offered for him to come work for me. He was 22 years old at the time and is now looking to become a master plumber and start his own business. At my wedding, in which he was my best man, he decided that during his speech, he would give all of us a big surprise and decided to propose to his longtime girlfriend. My wife and I were appalled. We both felt like he stole the shine from our day. Everyone else in our families were so excited and kept taking pictures with her and looking at the ring, etc. So I decided to fire him the next day. He still doesn't understand why, and he claims that I'm being selfish and irrational, and our parents somehow agree. They're saying that business should be separate from our personal lives, but I just can't overlook what he did and how he ruined our day. Am I overthinking this? For clarification, he will be getting severance. He is still my brother, and I wouldn't let him lose his home over this. But as a small business, I can't imagine seeing him every day at work, especially not now at least. Fast forward, and I did reach out to him and had plans to later speak to him in person, so we will see where that goes. But in the meantime, am I the jerk for firing my brother after he proposed at my wedding? Honestly, I can kind of see both sides of this, but in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. Your stupid brother really thought it would be okay to propose to his girlfriend in the middle of your wedding? Like, are you kidding me right now? That is so inappropriate. Like, seriously, what is wrong with him? That is not okay. I know if I was in your shoes, I would be utterly furious if he did that to me. And there is no way I would take that sitting down. There's no way in the world. And I don't blame you. How could you look at him every day at work and try and go back to some normality? And the fact that your parents are not seeing why this is such a toxic thing to do is honestly baffling to me. How can they seriously be okay with this when you literally were in the middle of being married and he is intentionally trying to steal your spotlight? This is not you being selfish. This is literally your day, and you had every right to celebrate your future marriage. So no, you're not the jerk in this situation. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I don't blame you for not wanting to deal with him at your work. But the moral of this story is seriously, don't propose at another person's wedding. It's lame, it's tacky, and it's honestly incredibly disrespectful. My entitled supervisor demands that I no longer take any more overtime to fix fix or work on anything while at work. So I maliciously comply, and as a result, 3 separate machines that are crucial to our job shut down entirely, causing thousands of dollars in lost profit, as well as many headaches on the side of management. Here's what happened. Years ago, I used to work for a plastic injection company in my hometown. It wasn't a huge company, but they had 2 plants in my state, as well as 2 in 2 other states, and 1 in the United Kingdom and 1 in Germany. So this company really wasn't that small. It was a 24-hour production facility, which means the machines run 24/7, except from December 23rd to January 2nd. I was one of the 2 delivery drivers who moved finished products from the plant to a nearby warehouse and brought raw materials and packaging supplies back to the plant. On a good day, I'd get 4 to 5 back and forth trips done in a 12-hour day. On my last run back to the warehouse, I'd always go around to the floor people and make sure they had what they needed just to make it through the night. The driver was the only floor position that wasn't 24 hours, and I also wanted to make sure that nothing would shut down. Well, sometimes they would forget something, and after my last run, I'd always have to go back. I wasn't complaining. I would get an hour or 2 of overtime every few shifts, so everything ran fine. But one day, my supervisor pulls me aside and says I need to stop taking overtime. Now, I explain why I'm taking overtime, but he doesn't care. No more overtime ever. So I say, okay, and we just go about our day. Near the end of my shift, I'm about 15 minutes shy of being able to clock out, and I'm just finishing up packing up my truck to do the next morning run. And that's right when one of the floor people comes over and tells me he forgot something. I say to him, sorry, no can do. I'm not allowed any more overtime to go and pick up the material. Now, apparently, if I didn't do it, 3 machines would shut down overnight. Now, if any of you have worked in plastic injection, you know these machines get so hot, they melt the plastic being injected. If they have no material flowing in them, they have to get shut down or they will get too hot. It can take hours for them to cool down, and they have to be started from a cold state when you go to reboot them. So if it runs out of material, production has to stop, the machine has to take about 10 to 12 hours to cool down, and then it has to heat back up. Now, this is all very unfortunate, but I've got to follow my orders. So I clock out and I go home. The next morning rolls around and I am called into the plant supervisor's office. And this guy is my supervisor's boss and is one of the owners of the entire company. He is shaking mad because just as my coworker predicted, 3 machines shut down overnight and were going to be out of commission until nearly 2 p.m. that afternoon. He was going to fire me on the spot, but gave me a chance to explain myself. When I told him what I used to do and what my supervisor had told me to do, he let out a big sigh and told me to go back to the floor, and that if I need to take overtime just to keep the machine from going offline, I should just do it from now on. Now, shortly after that, my main supervisor was called into his office. Now, unfortunately, he is the son of one of the other owners, so they didn't fire him. But after that, I never got yelled at about taking overtime ever again. Wow, that supervisor was really dumb. If he had any sense about him, he would have been like, yes, please take the overtime. Please make sure that we're still running and we can still do our jobs. Like, this guy honestly did not know what he was doing. He probably thought you were trying to work the system and he was catching you in the act or something like that, when in reality, you're probably one of the main players that keeps that place running in the first place. And boy, did he learn that really quickly as well. And while it is kind of disappointing that this guy didn't get fired, and honestly, in this situation, nepotism really sucks, it is really nice that you never got bothered ever again, because your supervisor was a complete moron, and now you get to enjoy the fruits of having overtime basically whenever you want. Am I the jerk for turning down a bridesmaid that I was assigned to at a wedding after she was determined to hook up with me at the end of the night? Here's what happened. One of my good friends from college was getting married. We'll call him Tom, that's not his real name. And we will call his wife Liz, also not her real name. And my friend asked me to be one of his groomsmen. I was honored because I hadn't seen him in a while since I live across the country. When I arrived to his city, I was assigned a bridesmaid. We'll call her Kelly. Now, Kelly is a lovely woman. However, I think we were only assigned to each other because we are both black. Liz starts telling me that we are both single and perfect for each other, but there was nothing to indicate that at all besides us both just being black. I should also add that Liz had a lot more bridesmaids than Tom had as groomsmen. The first night, the entire wedding party went out, and it became clear that Kelly wanted to hook up. I was not into her at all, so I kindly turned her down. She then starts interrogating me as to why. I try to give a generic answer, but she starts listing off all of the reasons why we would be so perfect for each other. I end up saying that I don't do the whole short-term type of thing, and as we both live in completely different states, there is no future here. She ends up cooling off, but then tells me that she respects me more for that, and that I am a stand-up guy and the type of guy that she is looking for. During the rest of the time we were there, one of the other unmatched brides, we'll call her Jen, starts messaging me privately and we hit it off. The next day, the wedding ceremony goes well, we have the reception, and me and Kelly do our entrance together, and then we dance together for a little bit. After a bit, I go to the bar and Jen and I start to dance. At this point, Kelly is giving me dirty looks, but I just ignore it and continue to have a good time. All is going well until when I am at the bar, Kelly and Liz confront me and start saying that me dancing with Jen is inappropriate. They start saying she is too young for me and that it looks really creepy. For reference, I'm 32 years old and she is 24, about to turn 25. So I say to them, oh, it's okay. Me and Jen are just like friends. Liz at this point is angry with me and starts saying that Jen is in college. She's going for her master's degree and that this is her wedding and she doesn't want to see that. Then Kelly starts to say that I must have a thing for white women. At this point, I realize that there is no logical argument that I can make. I tell Kelly and Liz that I really enjoyed the wedding, but I need to go to bed early for my flight the next day. So I leave and I go to my hotel. 15 minutes later, Jen leaves early, and 5 minutes after Jen came up, we both get kicked out of the wedding party chat. I later found out from Tom that Kelly was crying her eyes out, and that I messed up the night for Liz as well. He told me that he isn't mad at me because he told Liz from the start that Kelly isn't going to be my type, but instead, Liz really wanted to set Kelly up. At this point, I feel terrible that I made it so Liz was not able to enjoy her special night, but when it comes to Kelly, I just wish that she would understand that no means no. First and foremost, this is honestly ridiculously crazy. They only matched you with Kelly because of your skin color. That is honestly really weird to me, and that's so disrespectful. And it was all under the guise of saying, okay, let's just try and match you up with somebody. I'm gonna be matchmaker and get Kelly a date. Like seriously, what are you doing? This is like some next level crazy. The original poster made it very clear. I'm not interested in hooking up with Kelly at the short term. I don't want to get with her, and honestly, this is really weird. And also, they can't tell the original poster who he can and cannot dance with. He had every right to dance with that lady. There was nothing wrong with it, and honestly, them trying to be like, wow, you're really weird. You have a thing for white women. Like, what are you talking about? They were having fun and they were just enjoying themselves. It's not like the original poster's married to Kelly. He doesn't even like her. So seriously, I don't think you're the jerk in this situation, but instead, I think the wife is incredibly messed up and also a massive jerk for trying to set you up. My mom calls me constantly throughout the day, forcing me to stay on the phone with her for over 5 hours at a time, all because she's grieving the loss of a family member. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So this past week, my mom lost her father. Although I can't begin to understand what she is feeling, I did lose my dad when I was 18. With that being said, since he passed away, my mom has been calling me 10 plus times a day, and I often spend 3 to 5 hours on the phone talking to her about my dad and her missing him. Last night, she said I sounded rude, and I finally snapped. I said to her, not to be rude, but you have called me 16 times today, and I've spent 5 hours on the phone with you today, and I just don't know what to say anymore. It wasn't right, but I'd spent so much time on the phone, or just waiting for the phone to ring again, that I was just so done. She yelled at me and said that I need to be there for a family member in crisis, and that she would support me and stay on the phone with me all day if I needed it, while also saying that it hurts that I won't do the same for her. This morning, she even doubled down and keeps texting me about how I need to learn kindness and how I should support her while she is in crisis, and I honestly just don't have it in me. I can't support someone who is demanding all my time. I have a life too, and she just doesn't care. Like, she even makes those snarky comments, saying stuff like, I'm sorry my pain and hurt is cutting into your time. But it's like, I'm in school or at work. I feel like I'm a horrible person for feeling this way, but it is just too much on me mentally. How do I set boundaries with her? And how do I make her listen? Am I being unreasonable, or does this seem like way too much? What should I do? I do not think you're being unreasonable at all. Your mom is not only guilt tripping you into staying on the phone for 3 to 5 hours at a time, but she's also calling you obnoxiously and treating you like her therapist, which honestly, it kind of sounds like she needs one of those. I mean, I understand that she's grieving, but the way she's going about trying to figure that grief out is really invading your life. So personally, I think it's time to start setting boundaries. Tell her that no, you're not going to answer at the drop of a hat, and she can't call you multiple times throughout the day. Maybe set up like a window from 5 to 6 o'clock at night where she can talk to you and have some kind of conversation. Because what she's doing right now is really invasive and really weird. I mean, she's calling more than 10 times a day and spending hours on the phone. I don't know about you, but I got stuff to do during the day. day, and I can't just spend that on the phone trying to console my mother, who is clearly inconsolable. I mean, I'm surprised you even put up with this for as long as you did. So hopefully some kind of boundary can be set up between you and your mom, because right now she's being really weird, and that's not fair for you or your life in the slightest. An entitled Karen attacks me after I leave a negative review for her toy store, shoving me out the store and forcing both of us to call the police. And now I'm stuck unsure if I'm the jerk in this situation or if I should have done things differently. Here's what happened. The following story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. So this happened about a week ago. My husband, who's a 27-year-old male, as well as myself, a 27-year-old female, recently moved across the country to this much quieter town and started looking for small businesses to go to. One day, we found what looked to be an interesting toy store. So while I watched our 1.5-year-old son, my husband went to go check it out. When he got there, the lady running the store, who we later found out to be the owner, started acting rather odd towards my husband. She began acting suspicious of him and rather rude. All the while, he tried to just be nice, thinking the lady might cool down after a moment or two. But when she asked if he was looking for something, he said he was looking to price check and look around, maybe see if they had an item he was specifically looking for. He even mentioned a competitor in town and that he had price checked their prices earlier in the day. Somehow that seemed to set her off, and she began going on about how they send people to spy on her, take pictures of her store, items, and prices, and that they are just greedy. In the next moment, she suddenly turned on him, ranting and saying he was probably just another one of their spies, all coming in just to steal from her. At that moment, he decided to just find something small and just leave, still trying to be pleasant, but also just wanting to get out of there. She then snapped at him, yelling at him to just go and leave, to just take the item and get out of there. He was so surprised and said he wanted to pay for it. And again, she snapped and told him to go, so he did just that. Not long after, he called me telling me what happened as he drove home. I was shocked and disgusted by the lady's behavior, so I went online to Google, Yelp, and her store's Facebook page, giving each an honest review of my husband's experience at her business. Not even 30 minutes later, she commented by saying, "First of all, that is not at all what happened. I strongly urge you to discuss what really happened with your husband and enjoy the free gift I gave him. I would highly recommend rethinking your words on the reviews because this is now slander. But thanks for bashing a small business. I bet you feel like a keyboard hero now." I was surprised by this, and I will admit I got really irritated, but thought that maybe there was some kind of miscommunication or misunderstanding of some sort, specifically between her and my husband. So I said to her, "Okay, then explain to me what happened," because he definitely talked to me about what happened. And honestly, this is where things begin to really pop off. She then completely ignored what I just said, and in another comment thread of my review, posted a picture of my husband from what I am guessing in her surveillance system, and said with it, "Thank you so much for whatever you told your wife. I hope you really enjoy your free gift." And again, I got really irritated, but I also noticed something in that moment. She wasn't saying what really happened. So I responded with, "Oh, so you're avoiding my question. What is your side of the story? What happened?" Not long after that reply, my husband finally got home. I asked him for the toy, and when he asked why, I said I'm going to return it and ask her what she thinks happened, since she was giving me no straight answer online. Fast forward, and when I got to her store, I was immediately met with hostility. She asked if I was such and such online and wanted to know my name. So I said honestly, yes, that's me. She then asked for us to talk outside, and I said sure, go ahead. I did not speak to her with any form of aggression. I just wanted to return the toy and get clarification. However, I never got the chance to just talk with her, and instead, when I went to put the toy on the register, she blocked my way. She yelled at me, "I don't want you here." And immediately, without any other warning or giving me a chance to respond, she physically shoved me towards the door. In shock of the moment, and still just in the mindset of wanting to be rid of this stupid toy, I threw it off to the side and into the store, and I saw it hit the floor just before having the door shut in my face. We both called the cops, and I sat in my car waiting for them while she hid in her locked store. We both talked to them separately, and I told them how she shoved me. She told them that I hit her with the toy first. In the end, I was given an 18-month trespassing citation for her claiming that I hit her with the toy, which honestly, the citation means nothing to me, as both my husband and I have no intention of ever returning, especially after the way she treated us. However, I feel the cops did this to make her happy, as she seemed the most agitated, and just to make sure that I wouldn't come in and contact her ever again. again, which I agreed with and I understood. They just wanted to make sure there was no further conflict and that this didn't escalate any further. The officers did say, however, that I shouldn't have made a personal situation public. I didn't argue, but I thought this was odd. I mean, I posted in her review section our experience at her store. Isn't that what a review section is for? The next day, I noticed on both my Google review and my Facebook review that she stated, "We believe the authorities handled this situation appropriately and it was much to our satisfaction." I ended up responding in kind by saying, "I also agree the authorities handled it well. After all, we had no intentions of returning after how we were treated. Nor do we intend to after the 18 months are up." But after thinking on it for some time, I think the both of us got worked up over a misunderstanding, even though I don't know what set you off first at my husband. Now, I'm still willing to hear your side of the story, as that was half of my intention yesterday, alongside returning your toy. If you're willing to, you can direct message me and talk. If not, I understand. And this will be the last time you will hear from my husband and myself. I will also be keeping my 1-star review up, as that is an honest experience of what happened at your store. Later on, I thought back on the events and I realized something. If I did supposedly hit her with a toy, why was no assault charge made? I feel it's because she didn't want to turn her surveillance recordings over, showing that she had laid her hands on me first. However, we do not plan to take her to court for assault either, because we feel it may be too much trouble and way too difficult to try and force her to release the footage. A few days later, we noticed her Facebook page had blocked me, and seeing through a friend's account, we saw that she had removed and hidden reviews from there. However, on all the reviews on other sites that I had put up, those negative reviews were still there. And lastly, we noticed that on her Google page, she had roughly 7 negative reviews saying the same thing. So honestly, are we the jerks in this situation? What should we do? Honestly, I really wish you had your phone with you and you recorded that interaction going into that store. That's honestly the first thing I would have done. That would have cleared up all of this. Because of course, she's not going to give over her footage. She's not going to say you assaulted her, because that could very easily be proved otherwise by her footage. She literally didn't have a leg to stand on. Like seriously, this lady has some issues. She came at your husband and then you physically? Like good lord, that is not okay. So to answer your question, no, you are not the jerk here. This lady was totally out of line. Like she was not only paranoid from the get-go about your husband, but she was also hyper-aggressive, literally because you were sharing the truth online and it made her look bad. And you know that got under her skin. You know for a fact that she absolutely hated that negative review. That probably hurt her way more than anything else you could have done. And you know what? You found other reviews that corroborated your evidence. So trust me, it's not just you. This lady has a problem, and if anything, her business is probably going to shut down eventually. So nope, you are not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong, and this lady is absolutely insane. And hopefully her business fails sooner than later. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for divorcing my cheating wife after she cheated on me with a coworker? Here's what happened. Now, before we go any further, all names in this story are completely fake. Well, the title says it all. The moment I discovered my wife Sarah's infidelity is forever etched in my memory. It was a typical evening, and I had returned home from work due to feeling unwell. As I walked into our house, a sense of unease washed over me, prompting me to investigate what had been bothering me for weeks. My suspicion had been growing steadily, fueled by subtle changes in Sarah's behavior and the distant look in her eyes. Deep down, I knew something was amiss, but I wanted to trust her completely. However, on that fateful evening, my intuition got the better of me. I made my way to our study, where Sarah often spent time on her computer. As I approached, I noticed her quickly minimize a chat window on the screen. Alarm bells rang in my head as I realized that she was trying to hide something from me. The sense of betrayal intensified, and I mustered the courage to confront her about it. With trembling hands, I asked Sarah to show me what she had been hiding. At first, she hesitated and tried to deflect, but the desperation in my voice and the tears welling up in my eyes left her with no choice but to reveal the truth. She confessed to having an affair with her coworker Steve for several months. The words hung heavily in the air, piercing through my heart like a dagger. The pain was excruciating, as if my entire world had crumbled in an instant. My mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, and disbelief all vied for dominance. In that moment, the trust we had built over a decade of marriage shattered irreparably. The foundation upon which our relationship stood had crumbled, leaving behind nothing but a hollow shell shell of what once was. I knew then that I couldn't continue the marriage, not after such a profound betrayal. As the days passed, I sought solace and clarity by staying with my parents. The pain was unbearable, but it allowed me to reflect on the situation and consider my options. The more I pondered, the more convinced I became that divorce was the only path forward. The breach of trust was too deep, and I couldn't envision a future where I couldn't fully trust Sarah again. With a heavy heart, I made the agonizing decision to file for divorce. Sarah pleaded with me for another chance, promising change and expressing remorse for her actions, but deep down, I knew that rebuilding the trust that we once had was an impossible task. Throughout the divorce proceedings, Sarah's pleas continued, but my resolve remained unyielding. I wanted to break free from the pain and betrayal that had consumed our relationship. It was a painful and emotional journey, but I knew it was the right choice for my own well-being. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Sarah was left devastated, and I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The weight of the past slowly lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to begin the process of healing and moving forward. In the midst of rebuilding my life, I cautiously opened myself up to the possibility of love once again. And it was during this time that I met Jenny, a remarkable woman who embodied the qualities I had longed for in a partner. Her kindness and honesty and unwavering loyalty helped restore my faith in love. Jenny became my rock, supporting me through the healing process and showing me that love could be pure and genuine. With her by my side, I rediscovered happiness and fulfillment. We forged a deep connection, and a year later, we celebrated our marriage, grateful for the love and joy that we found in each other. As for Sarah, her whereabouts and actions became inconsequential to me. While rumors reached me that she had moved away, I made a conscious choice not to keep tabs on her. My focus shifted towards my own happiness, the well-being of my new family, and the pursuit of a life that is fulfilling. Reflecting on the situation, seeking revenge was initially a part of my emotional response. However, I came to realize that revenge would not bring me true happiness or closure. Divorcing Sarah, on the other hand, allowed me to break free from the pain and betrayal, paving the way for a brighter future. Today, I am finally content with my life. Jenny's love and the family we've created bring me immeasurable joy. I am grateful for the strength I found within myself and for the blessings that have come my way. While the past held moments of intense pain, it has shaped me into a resilient individual who values trust, loyalty, and personal happiness above all else. Wow, this story had a great ending at the end of the day. Obviously, you're not the jerk for divorcing your wife for cheating on you. If I was in your shoes and I experienced something like that, I think I would also be devastated and really want to get away from her. I mean, you saw right away that this is just not going to work. There's no way you can even begin to try and repair this, and it was better to get out of that relationship while you could and move on to somebody who really would love you. Because what Sarah did to you was unacceptable. She cheated on you behind your back with a coworker, and now she's probably wondering, well, was it worth it? And I can guarantee you that the answer is a resounding no. So good for you for moving on and finding a better life, because Sarah betrayed your trust, and from the sounds of it, it looks like your new wife is going to treat you a lot better than Sarah ever could. My boyfriend is giving me the silent treatment, all because he's embarrassed of his actions. And honestly, at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years, and we just moved in together a few months ago. I'll preface this by saying that we went to a football game earlier, and he had quite a bit to drink. He stopped when we got home so he could sober up. That way we could go see his friends tonight. But he still seemed a bit tipsy when this whole thing went down. About an hour ago, we were getting ready to go see his friends. He was in the bathroom, and all of a sudden, I hear him freak out. Apparently, our dog had gone pee on the floor in the bathroom. About a half hour prior to this, she had been staring at us in a needy sort of way, which she does literally 24/7, making it hard to decipher what she needs, if anything. So I thought that maybe she needed to go potty, but he didn't think so because she had just gotten back from the dog park about an hour before this. He started yelling at her in a lighthearted way, but I told him to stop because she was trying to tell us she needed to go to the bathroom, and neither of us took her out. It was our fault that she had an accident. She's the sweetest, most well-behaved dog. I said that she can't tell whether or not he's playfully yelling at her. All she hears is him raising his voice at her, which clearly scared her because she ran out of the bathroom with her tail tucked between her legs, and she was shaking at that. He stopped yelling at her, went downstairs to grab our food delivery. Then when he came back upstairs, he came over to where me and the dog were. I was sitting at the dining room table, and she was sitting underneath me. He again playfully raised his hand like he was about to hit her, and she was cowering underneath me. I became livid. I yelled at him, "What are you doing?" He laughed and said he was just kidding, as if our dog was supposed to know he wasn't actually going to hit her. He has a dark sense of humor, especially when he drinks, but this was absolutely unacceptable. It left a horrible taste in my mouth. After this, we didn't say anything to each other. I ate my dinner at the kitchen counter while he ate behind me at the dining table. He was eating spaghetti and was very loudly slurping his noodles. He's eaten spaghetti in front of me many times, and he's never done that, so I figured that he was just trying to further irritate me. At first, I let it slide, but after the 5th time, I peered back at him and I said, "Do you seriously have the audacity to slurp your noodles?" He sarcastically looks at me and says, "Wow, sorry." I continued eating, and a couple minutes later, he started loudly belching, all while I was still clearly eating. I looked at him again, and he was like, "Geez, sorry, I can't do anything right." Look, I'm not offended by burping normally, but slurping your food and burping while someone is eating in front of you is so grating and entirely bad-mannered to me. Then he passive-aggressively started talking to our dog, saying something like, "Should we just stay home tonight?" And then went and changed into his pajamas and proceeded to not talk to me after that. After we finished eating, he stomped off to the bedroom and slammed the door. I immediately followed him in and asked what his problem was. He didn't respond for a while, and then he said, "I don't like the way you talk to me. You seem annoyed." I said I was annoyed at the time, but I wanted to move on so we don't ruin our weekend yet again. This is the 3rd time he's chosen to silently pout and stomp around like a child, mind you. You know, rather than communicate, and this is what he does in an argument ever since we moved in together. I am beyond fed up with it. The last time was 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the silent treatment lasted for 4 full days. I just stood in the doorway waiting for a response, and he kept ignoring me and watching TV. Occasionally, he would shoot me a dirty look and snap and say, "What do you want me to say?" I said, if this relationship is going to continue, we need to start communicating about issues as soon as they arise, not ignore each other for days on end. He said, "I'm embarrassed and I don't want to talk to you," and then motioned for me to get out. So I shut the door, and I've been sitting in the living room ever since then. He's come out 3 times to get something from the kitchen and just keeps shooting me dirty looks and not talking to me. As I said, this is a routine thing that happens during arguments, and I'm beyond fed up. I feel like I'm dating a child, not a grown man who's turning 30 next month. What should I do or say to him? I'm so annoyed that this is happening again, especially when I'm about to leave and spend the night at my parents'. I don't even know if this relationship is worth salvaging. What should I do? Honestly, your boyfriend is being incredibly immature. Giving someone the silent treatment and refusing to talk to them all because of something that you did and the stupid stuff you decided to pull off is honestly so toxic. There's no reason to act like that. Like, seriously, that's inappropriate. You literally just said, "Hey, stop burping and belching and don't pretend like you're gonna hit the dog." And by the way, what he did to that dog was awful. The original poster's right. I don't think that dogs can really understand the nuance of any kind of sarcasm or stuff like that. So if you raise your voice at them, they probably think, "Oh yeah, you really are mad at me." Or if you fuss at them or make them feel bad, they're gonna feel that and they're gonna think you're upset. So I don't blame the original poster for being like, "Stop it, what are you doing?" Let's also remember that this guy's almost 30 years old, and his way of dealing with problems is to give the silent treatment. That is so immature, it's not even funny. So honestly, if you want any kind of positive change, it's definitely gonna have to start with him. He needs to learn how to communicate better, or at least just own up to his mistakes, because the way he's doing it right now is honestly so toxic, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for fainting at my aunt's wedding and practically ruining it all in one go? Here's what happened. So I'm a 21-year-old female, and I attended my aunt's wedding a few weeks ago. I was not part of the wedding. I was just a guest, which I was fine with. Before the wedding, everyone was advised to drink lots of water and eat something beforehand because it was going to be extremely hot that day. The wedding started at 5:00 p.m., and I had absolutely nothing to eat or drink up until then, except maybe a granola bar because I was extremely busy that day. So when it was time for the wedding, I was already tired and hungry. About 30 minutes into the wedding, which was a church too, by the way, I was feeling uneasy and lightheaded, so I excused myself to go to the washroom. As I was walking, I got the feeling like I was about to collapse. The next thing I can remember was coming to and seeing lots of people surrounding me, including the bride and groom. Apparently, when I fainted, I fell onto the photographer who was crouched down near me. Not only that, but he dropped the camera lens and broke it. To be honest, I don't even remember seeing the photographer, but I may have been too dizzy or something like that to even see him in the first place. Now, the wedding was a bit of a cheaper one, so the photographer was a family friend of the groom's who only had one camera with him. The bride was just in tears that she won't have any good pictures from her wedding. The photographer insisted that he could drive home and grab a different one, but it would unfortunately take too long to do that. The bride was indeed mad at me, but I feel like it was a bit harsh as it was extremely extremely embarrassing for me already. Fainting never even crossed my mind as something that would happen at all. Now, they did get pictures, but unfortunately, it was on their cell phones. So am I the jerk for fainting at this wedding and practically ruining it? What should I do? So honestly, I can kind of see both sides of this. Obviously, you didn't mean to faint. I mean, that wasn't really in your control. I mean, nobody shows up to a wedding and is like, hey, I'm definitely gonna faint right about now. But you yourself did say that, hey, I didn't eat or drink all day, even though you knew it was gonna be hot. That part is absolutely on you. Nobody could have predicted that you were gonna pass out. Nobody could have planned for that, and honestly, it really was kind of a freak accident. But I think this could have been avoided if you just drank some water and ate some food. You should not have ignored that advice. Like, clearly the worst thing happened to you specifically. You fainted at the wedding, and now they're never gonna have really good pictures of their wedding. And that's not fair. That literally is not fair in the slightest. Now, don't get me wrong, you didn't do this intentionally, and of course that photographer is really cheap for only bringing one lens with them, but overall you probably should have planned this better, and you should have been more attentive to the advice that you were given. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.